Hi, welcome back to Wolf Heart Tales. Before we dive into tonight's twisted tale of forbidden bonds and shattered realities, show your pack pride, haul at that like button, and leave a comment telling me, would you risk everything for a love that could destroy the world? Now, settle in for an epic journey across 12 chapters. This is the story of the last speaker and the cursed wolf who would reshape reality itself. Chapter 1. Blood Moon Awakening. The wolf's snarl tore through Stormwatch Palace like a death knell. 3 royal guards crashed backward onto blood-slick cobblestones, their silver armor dented and useless. Commander Aldrich pressed his palm against the shredded remains of his sleeve, crimson seeping between his fingers. Nobody moves. His bark echoed off the ice-forged walls. Send for the Winter King. Tell His Majesty that Shadowfang has gone feral again. I pressed myself deeper into the servant's alcove, my woven basket of healing herbs clutched against my pounding heart. Just pass through. Stay invisible. You're nobody. The mantra had kept me alive for 19 years in this frozen kingdom where power meant everything and I possessed nothing, just Tessa, the healer's apprentice who gathered Moonbell and Silverleaf from the Thornvale wilds. But the massive wolf standing in the courtyard's center made staying invisible impossible. Shadowfang. They called him the Winter King's untouchable companion, though everyone whispered he was something far worse, a curse, a punishment, a monster wrapped in silver moonlight. His coat gleamed like liquid mercury despite the blood matting his shoulder, and his eyes gods. His eyes burned amber gold, wild with rage, and something else. Something that looked almost like memory. Fetch the iron poles, someone shouted. We'll pin him against the wall. You'll lose your arm trying, another guard muttered. I should have fled. Every instinct screamed at me to slip away before anyone noticed I'd witnessed the Winter King's beast refusing his handlers again. But then Shadowfang turned, and our eyes met across the chaos. The world stopped. Those amber eyes held mine, and beneath the fury, I saw something that made my breath catch. Recognition. Impossible, unthinkable recognition. Like he'd been searching for me across lifetimes and finally found what he'd lost. But I'd never been this close to the Winter King's wolf before. I was nothing. Nobody. Just an apprentice who mixed poultices and tried not to be noticed. Shadowfang took a step toward me. Don't move, girl, Commander Aldrich barked. He'll tear you apart. My body wouldn't obey anyway. I stood frozen as the enormous wolf approached, muscles coiled like springs beneath that silver coat. Guards raised weapons, swords, spears, iron chains meant to bind supernatural strength. Please, I whispered, the word escaping without permission. You're hurt. The wolf stopped mid-stride. His ears swiveled forward, focused entirely on me with an intensity that should have been terrifying. Through the blood and rage, I saw the wound clearly now, 3 deep gashes across his shoulder, edges blackened with something toxic. Let me see, I heard myself say, voice somehow steady despite my racing heart. I can help. What happened next sent gasps rippling through the courtyard. The wolf that had just savaged 3 trained guards, the beast that hadn't let anyone touch him in the 3 blood moons since he'd appeared at this frozen palace, slowly lowered himself to the ground. Not in threat, in submission. He laid his massive head on his paws, amber eyes never leaving mine, and waited. The silence stretched so thick I could hear my own heartbeat thundering in my ears. Then footsteps, powerful, deliberate, echoed from the palace entrance. What is the meaning? The Winter King's voice died as he took in the scene, his untouchable wolf prostrated before a nobody healer's apprentice. When his ice-blue eyes found mine, I knew with bone-deep certainty that my invisible life had just ended. King Thane stood in the arched doorway like winter incarnate, tall, dark-haired, with features carved from frost and shadow. Where his twin brother Valen ruled the Eastern Dominion with rot and cruelty, Thane commanded the Northlands with cold precision. He was everything the stories claimed, beautiful and terrible as a blizzard, powerful enough to make frost form beneath his boots when anger stirred. Step away from him. The command carried absolute authority, yet I couldn't move. Shadowfang hadn't broken eye contact, and something in those amber depths held me captive like invisible chains. "My lord," Commander Aldrich stammered. "The girl," she spoke to him, and he just... I can see what happened. Thane stepped into the courtyard, and the very air seemed to bend around him. What I don't understand is how. He moved closer, and I caught his scent, pine and iron, and something wild beneath the royal exterior, like he'd made bargains with forces that shouldn't be named. "What are you?" His question sliced through the charged air. "No one, Your Majesty." I finally found my voice, though it trembled. "Just an apprentice. I gather herbs for healer Kieran." No one doesn't tame Shadowfang. He studied me with unsettling focus. He's killed 6 men who tried to touch him. Won't accept food from anyone but me. Not since he appeared 3 years ago under the blood moon. Shadowfang chose that moment to shift, pressing his injured shoulder toward me with a soft whine that sounded far too human. "He's hurt," I said, surprising myself with my boldness. "There's poison in the wound. Thorn venom, if I'm not mistaken. It won't kill him, but it burns like acid through shifter blood." The Winter King's eyes narrowed. "You can tell that from here?" I couldn't explain that I'd always been able to sense poison, feel injury like a shadow on my skin, taste death in the air before it arrived. That was the secret that had driven me from my village 7 years ago, the gift that marked me as either blessed or cursed depending on who you asked. The reason my mother had died getting me across the border. "I can smell it," I lied. "Then heal him." "Your Majesty," Aldrich protested. "If she fails, she won't." The king's certainty sent ice down my spine. "Will you, little healer?" Swallowing hard, I knelt beside Shadowfang. The wolf's breath stirred my dark hair as I examined the wound more closely. 3 deep gashes, 2 deliberate and precise to be from battle. "These weren't accident wounds," I whispered, my fingers hovering over the torn flesh. "Who did this to you?" Shadowfang's growl rumbled through the courtyard, low, threatening, ancient. But not at me. His eyes fixed on something beyond the palace walls. Or someone. I worked quickly, pulling herbs from my basket. Moonbell for the poison, silver leaf for accelerated healing, crushed with ashwood bark to prevent infection. My hands moved without conscious thought, guided by instinct older than memory. "Where did you learn that technique?" The Winter King's voice came from directly behind me, close enough that I felt his cold presence, like winter itself breathing down my neck. I don't know. It just feels right." As I pressed the poultice to Shadowfang's wounds, the wolf shuddered. Then, beyond all reason and natural law, the angry red inflammation began to fade. Within moments, the gashes started closing, new flesh knitting together as if time itself accelerated. Gasps echoed around us. Even the king stepped back. "That's not possible," someone whispered. "Not even the palace healers can work that fast." Shadowfang rose, shaking his massive silver coat. Then he did something that sent murmurs through the gathered crowd, something that would change everything. He pressed his enormous head against my shoulder in unmistakable affection. The gesture was so gentle, so human in its tenderness, that my eyes burned with sudden tears. "You're coming with me," the Winter King declared, his voice cutting through my emotional haze. My heart stopped. "Your Majesty, I have duties." "Your duty is whatever I say it is." His ice-blue eyes held mine, and I glimpsed something beneath that cold exterior. Curiosity, calculation, and something else that made my pulse race with equal parts fear, and something I didn't want to name. "Shadowfang hasn't accepted anyone since he..." Thane cut himself off sharply, jaw clenching. "Since what?" I dared to ask. "Pack your things. You'll have quarters in the palace tower." He turned away, dismissing me, but not before I saw the flash of pain cross his features. "But I'm nobody," I whispered. He paused at the archway, looking back over his shoulder. "No," he said, studying me with an intensity that made me want to run. "You're something else entirely, and I intend to find out what." As guards scrambled to escort me away, I caught my reflection in a frost-covered palace window. For just a moment, A single heartbeat. My brown eyes seemed to flash gold. The same shade as Shadowfang's. But that was unthinkable, wasn't it? Behind us, in the shadow of the eastern gate, a figure watched our departure with cold interest. By nightfall, a raven would carry the message to King Valen in the Eastern Dominion. His brother's untouchable wolf has finally found someone it will protect, and wars have been started over less. Chapter 2. The Speaker's Mark. The tower room they gave me was larger than my entire childhood home. Moonlight streamed through arched windows that faced the Thornvale wilds, and I couldn't shake the feeling that placing me here was deliberate, a cage with a view of freedom, beautiful and cold as everything else in this frozen palace. You'll need proper clothing. The voice startled me so badly, I nearly dropped the herb bundle I'd been clutching like a lifeline. An elegant woman stood in my doorway, materializing from shadows as if she'd always been there. Silver hair crowned with a circlet of black thorns, violet eyes that seemed to see straight through flesh and bone to whatever lay beneath. "I'm Morwen," she said, circling me the way Shadowfang might circle prey. "The king's advisor. Also his aunt, though he'd prefer you forget that familial connection." Her smile was sharp as winter ice. "Village girl. Herb knowledge. No formal training. Yet you did in minutes what our palace healers couldn't accomplish in 3 years." She paused directly in front of me, so close I could see flecks of silver fire in those violet depths. "Curious." "I've always been good with animals," I said, hating how defensive I sounded. "Shadowfang isn't just an animal." Morwen's expression shifted to something almost like pity. "Surely you figured that out." Before I could respond, a long howl echoed through the night, mournful, desperate calling. My skin prickled with recognition. Every hair on my arm stood on end, and something deep in my chest answered that cry with a pulse so visceral it stole my breath. "He's calling for you," Morwen observed, those unsettling eyes studying my reaction. "Shadowfang has never called for anyone. Not even Thane. Why doesn't the king just let him go if he's so difficult?" The question escaped before I could stop it. "Let him go." Morwen laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "Child, Shadowfang isn't a pet. He's a guardian, a protector bound by magic older than this kingdom. And apparently," her gaze sharpened, "he's decided you're what needs protecting." Another howl, more insistent. Desperate. My feet moved without permission, carrying me toward the door. "The king won't like you wandering the palace at night," Morwen warned, though she made no move to stop me. "Then the king should control his wolf better." I shot back, surprised by my own boldness. Her laughter followed me down the spiral stairs. "Oh, I like you, Tessa. Let's see if you survive long enough for me to regret that." I found Shadowfang in the courtyard where we'd first met, moonlight turning his silver coat to liquid starlight. But he wasn't alone. King Thane stood beside him, speaking in low tones that carried the weight of old grief and older guilt. They both turned as I approached, and the similarity in their predatory focus made my breath catch. 2 sets of eyes, ice blue and amber gold, fixed on me with identical intensity. "He won't rest," Thane said without preamble. "He's been pacing since you left, wearing grooves in the stone. The servants are terrified." "Maybe he senses something's wrong," I offered carefully, watching Shadowfang's ears swivel toward my voice. "Animals can feel danger before it arrives." "Is something wrong?" The king's question held weight I didn't understand. Above us, clouds shifted, revealing the full moon in all its silver glory. In that ethereal light, I saw something beyond comprehension, something that made reality tilt sideways. For just a heartbeat, Shadowfang's shadow didn't match his form. It was larger, human-shaped, a man reaching toward me with desperate hands. "You see it." Thane's voice was soft, not a question but a statement of terrible truth. "I don't understand," I whispered, unable to look away from that impossible shadow. "Most can't. Most see only what their minds allow." He moved closer, but Shadowfang positioned himself between us, not threatening, but protective. "Of me. Their reality is smaller, safer." "Your Majesty," I said carefully, my pulse thundering in my ears. What is Shadowfang? Really? The Winter King studied me for a long moment, moonlight casting his features in silver and shadow. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the weight of 3 years' worth of secrets. You truly don't know, do you? Don't know what you are. I'm a healer's apprentice, I said, though the words felt hollow even as they left my mouth. You're a speaker. The word fell between us like a stone into still water, sending ripples through reality itself. The temperature dropped. Frost spiraled outward from where we stood, creating patterns in the cobblestones that looked almost like ancient runes. There hasn't been one in 3 generations, Thane continued, his ice-blue eyes never leaving mine. They thought the bloodline died out, hunted to extinction by those who feared what speakers could do. I don't know what that means. My voice sounded small, frightened. It means, a new voice cut through the night like a blade, that my brother has been hiding something valuable. King Valen emerged from the shadows near the eastern gate, and everything in me recoiled. He was Thane's mirror image, yet wrong somehow. Where Thane was winter, Valen was rotting. Where Thane's eyes held ice, Valen's held void. Empty spaces where something vital should have been but was long since consumed. Shadowfang's snarl could have shattered the stone. Control your beast, brother, Valen said smoothly, though I noticed he kept his distance from those bared fangs. I'm here under treaty terms. The treaty doesn't allow night visits, Thane replied, his hand moving to rest on the pommel of his sword, ice-forged steel that seemed to drink in moonlight. It does when property is in question. Valen's smile made my skin crawl. The girl belongs to the eastern villages. My villages. Which makes her mine. I saw something flicker in his eyes then, not just cruelty, but something almost like fear. Gone before I could be certain. I belong to no one, I said, forcing strength into my voice even as my hands trembled. Valen's laugh was poison-made. Brave little speaker. But you bear the mark, don't you? His gaze dropped to my wrist. Show them. Show them the Moonwatcher's brand you've been hiding all your life. Ice flooded my veins. The birthmark. The violet wolf's eye I'd kept covered since childhood, wrapped in cloth and shame and my mother's dying whispers. Hide it, my little wolf speaker. Hide it until he finds you. That's what I thought, Valen said as I clutched my wrist protectively. The last speaker was my grandmother's property. The bloodline belongs to the east. You're coming home, little wolf whisper. Tonight. Shadowfang moved so fast I barely saw it. One moment he was beside me. The next, he stood over Valen, who lay sprawled on the cobblestones with teeth inches from his throat. And in that moment of perfect stillness, I heard it. Clear as crystal, impossible as moonlight at midnight. Shadowfang's voice in my mind. Not her. Never her. I'll kill you first. The words resonated through my skull, through my bones, through the very core of my being. Not animal thoughts or base instincts, but clear human consciousness wrapped in wolf form, screaming with desperate protection. Call him off, Valen wheezed, though his eyes glittered with triumph rather than fear. Or I'll have every eastern soldier at your gates by dawn. Shadowfang, I said softly, my voice somehow cutting through the violence. Please. The wolf's muscles trembled with restraint, his teeth still bared above Valen's throat. Through our impossible connection, I felt his rage, and beneath it, terror. Not for himself. For me. Please, I whispered again. I'm safe. I promise. Slowly, reluctantly, Shadowfang stepped back. But he positioned himself firmly between Valen and me, his meaning crystal clear to everyone present. She is mine to protect. Try to take her and die. Valen rose, brushing dirt from his black coat with deliberate calm. Interesting. The beast responds to her over you, brother. That must sting. State your business and leave, Thane said, his voice cold enough to freeze the flame. I've already stated it. The girl bears the speaker's mark. By ancient law. Ancient law also states, Morwen interrupted, appearing like smoke beside us, that a speaker chooses their own path once awakened. Her violet eyes burned in the darkness. Has she been awakened, Valen? The Eastern King's jaw clenched. She spoke to the wolf. That's communication. That's connection, not awakening. Don't twist the old words to suit your purposes. Morwen turned to me, her expression softening slightly. Show me your wrist, child. Reluctantly, I extended my arm. The birthmark I'd hidden since I could remember seemed to pulse in the moonlight, a perfect wolf's eye rendered in deep violet against my pale skin. Even now, even knowing what it meant, I wanted to hide it again. Dormant, Morwen announced. The essence sleeps until crisis or consent wakes it. She's under no obligation to anyone. Then I'll wake it, Valen said, and something dark and hungry moved behind his eyes. You wouldn't dare. Thane stepped forward, frost literally forming beneath his boots, spreading across the courtyard in crystalline patterns. The awakening ritual requires consent or crisis, Morwen warned. Valen's smile was vicious. If she won't consent, I'm happy to provide the crisis. Shadowfang lunged again, but this time Valen was ready. He spoke a word in a language that scraped against reality itself, ancient and wrong and powerful enough to make the air itself scream. Shadowfang froze mid-leap, suspended in the air like a grotesque sculpture, held by invisible chains of shadow magic. No! The word tore from my throat with physical force. Energy I didn't know I possessed erupted outward in a shockwave of violet light, shattering Valen's hold like glass. Shadowfang crashed to the ground, immediately recovering and placing himself protectively before me. But something had changed. I could feel it, a door in my mind cracking open, ancient power flooding through the gap. Suddenly the world was too bright and sounded too sharp. I could hear every heartbeat in the courtyard, feel every living thing within 100 yards. And beneath it all, Shadowfang's presence blazed like a bonfire in my consciousness. There, Valen said with dark satisfaction. Crisis provided. She's awakening. The world tilted. Colors became painful. I could taste magic in the air, copper and moonlight, and something that burned like frozen fire. Through the overwhelming sensory assault, I felt another presence wrapped around Shadowfang's essence, like chains. Magical chains. Binding him. Imprisoning him. Killing him slowly. You bound him, I gasped, staring at Thane in horror as understanding crashed over me. Shadowfang isn't your companion. He's your prisoner. The Winter King's face went pale as death. You don't understand. I understand enough. Energy coursed through me, wild and uncontrolled, making my hair whip around my face in an invisible wind. Release him. Now. I can't. The admission seemed to physically pain him. The binding. If I break it without the proper ritual, it will kill us both. Us. I looked between Thane and Shadowfang, seeing the threads of magic connecting them. Umbral chains of flesh, spirit, and crown. And suddenly, the terrible truth hit me like ice water. You're connected, I whispered. You're brothers, Valen supplied helpfully, his voice dripping with poisonous satisfaction. Didn't you wonder why they look so similar? Why Shadowfang appeared exactly 3 years ago, the same night Thane's youngest brother, Kieran, disappeared. Kieran, Morwen breathed, her violet eyes wide with shock and old grief. Gods above and below. You found him. I saved him, Thane snarled, finally losing his iron control. You cursed him, Valen countered. Your own brother, transformed into a beast, because he discovered your secret. Because he learned what you did to gain the throne. What secret? I demanded, my awakening power making the air crackle with energy. But even as I asked, the newly opened door in my mind provided the answer. Images flooded my consciousness, memories that weren't mine, pulled from the magical bonds connecting Thane and Shadowfang. Thane meeting with shadows in the deep thorn veil, bargaining with creatures that shouldn't exist, trading pieces of his soul for power, all to stop Valen from taking both kingdoms through murder and corruption. The price of power, I breathed, my voice hollow with horror. You traded your brother's humanity for the throne. to stop Valen from taking both kingdoms and burning them to ash. Thane's control finally shattered completely. Kieran was dying, poisoned by our dear brother's assassins. The forest spirits offered a choice: let him die, or bind him as a guardian to the crown. I chose to save him. You chose to enslave him, I said, my newfound strength singing with righteous rage. Shadowfang, Kieran pressed against my side, and through our connection, I felt the truth of it. The binding was indeed killing him slowly, trapping his human consciousness deeper with each passing day. Soon there would be only the wolf, mindless and savage. The brother would be gone forever. But now you're here, Valen said, circling us like a vulture sensing death. A freshly awakened speaker can break any binding, remake any curse. The question is, Little Moonwatcher, will you free the wolf and lose the man forever? Or maintain the binding and watch him fade slowly into nothing? There's a third option, Morwen said quietly, her voice cutting through the chaos. But it would require something from you, Tessa. Something you might not survive. Above us, storm clouds gathered without warning, responding to my emotional turmoil. Thunder rumbled across the thorn veil, and in the distance, something howled in answer. Not a wolf. Something older. Angrier. Responding to my awakening call. Choose quickly, Valen warned, backing toward the gates with calculated casualness. Because what you've awakened tonight, it's calling to things that have slept since the last speaker died. And trust me, Little Wolf whisper. His smile was sharp as broken glass. They're coming. Lightning split the sky, illuminating a sight that made everyone freeze. The Thornvale forest was moving. The trees themselves were walking, advancing on Stormwatch Palace with ancient purpose. Their branches creaked like bones, their roots tearing through earth as they marched. And leading them was a figure I recognized from childhood nightmares, massive and terrible, neither fully solid nor completely spirit. A wolf made of smoke and starlight and primordial power. The primal, the first of all shifters, the one even death couldn't claim. He'd come for his descendants. He'd come for Kieran. And based on the way those timeless eyes fixed on me, burning with colors that had no names, he'd come for the speaker, too. Chapter 3. Chains of Shadow. The primal stood at the edge of the thorn veil, and reality itself seemed to bend around him. His form shifted between substance and smoke. One moment a massive wolf larger than any natural creature, the next a towering figure that was neither man nor beast, but something that existed before such distinctions mattered. His eyes burned with colors I had no names for, hues that existed outside the spectrum mortals were meant to perceive. The walking trees halted behind him in a semicircle, their branches creaking in what sounded almost like reverence. Or anticipation. Grandfather. Thane's voice was barely a whisper, and I realized with shock that the Winter King was trembling. You dare invoke that title? The primal's voice was the sound of wind through graveyards, of ancient forests whispering secrets best left forgotten. You, who bound your own brother with chains of corrupted magic? Kieran, I couldn't think of him as just Shadowfang anymore, whined softly, pressing closer to me. Through our connection, I felt his conflict, joy at seeing his ancestor, shame at his imprisoned state, and something else.
Fear. For me.
He'll take you, Kieran's voice whispered in my mind, clearer now that my speaker abilities had awakened. Speakers are precious to the old ones. He'll claim you for the Shadow Realm. I claim no one, the primal said, his attention shifting to me with weight that made my knees want to buckle. Unlike my corrupted grandsons, I understand consent. He moved closer, and the temperature dropped 20 degrees with each step. Where his paws or feet, his form kept shifting, touched the ground. Frost spiraled outward in patterns that defied nature. Geometric impossibilities that hurt to look at too long. But you little speaker, you interest me. He was close enough now that I could see through his semi-translucent form to something beyond, threads of light connecting to countless points across dimensions. The last of your kind died screaming, betrayed by those she trusted. Will you share her fate? Not if I can help it, I said, surprised by my own steadiness. The primeval being laughed, a sound like breaking bones wrapped in silk.
Brave.
Your predecessor said the same before they tore her apart. His form solidified slightly, revealing features both wolf and man, beautiful and terrible in equal measure. Tell me, young speaker, what price would you pay to free my grandson? Don't. Thane's warning was sharp. You don't know what you're negotiating with. I know Kieran is dying. I shot back, anger flooding my veins. I can feel his human side fading with each passing hour. The binding is like acid eating away at his soul. Clever girl, Valen murmured from where he watched near the gates, making no move to flee despite the otherworldly threat before us. She already understands more than you do, brother. The primal circled us slowly, examining the invisible bonds between Thane and Kieran with those kaleidoscope eyes. The binding is complex. 3 layers: flesh, spirit, and crown. Break one wrong and both die. Break them in the wrong order. He paused, those terrible eyes finding mine. And worse things happen. What could be worse than death? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. Existence as a mindless beast for eternity, hunting all you once loved. His gaze never wavered. Or would you prefer your wolf prince as a consciousness trapped forever in a body he cannot control? Aware of every kill, every savage act, screaming silently inside his own skull for centuries. Through our connection, I felt Kieran's terror at both possibilities, a fear so deep it threatened to drag me under with him. There is another way, Morwen said carefully, stepping forward with her obsidian crown glinting in the storm light. The transference. Everyone went still. Even the walking trees seemed to hold their breath. You know what that requires, the primal said, and something almost like approval colored his ancient voice. I do. Morwen turned to me, her violet eyes filled with sympathy and steel. A speaker can transfer a binding from one vessel to another. You could take the crown bond from Thane, free Kieran completely. Making herself the wolf queen, Valen added with dark delight, bound to protect the northern throne forever. Chained just as thoroughly as Kieran is now. Or, the primal said slowly, his form becoming more solid, more there. She could transfer all 3 bonds to herself temporarily. Hold them while we reshape them into something new. Something that doesn't destroy the host. Silence fell like a guillotine blade. The last speaker who tried that exploded. Thane said flatly, his face carved from ice and horror. Literally. They found pieces of her across 3 kingdoms. She wasn't bound to the wolf first, the primal countered, those impossible eyes studying me with unnerving intensity. This one already shares Kieran's essence. She might survive.
Might.
The word hung in the air like a blade poised to fall. I'll do it, I said before I could talk myself out of it. Tessa, no. Kieran's mental voice was anguished, but Thane's physical protest was louder. Absolutely not. He started forward, but Kieran blocked him with a snarl that promised violence. Through our bond, I felt Kieran's resolve. He would die before letting his brother stop this. Before letting me throw away my chance to run, to escape, to live. But he didn't understand. Couldn't understand. I'd spent 19 years running, hiding, pretending to be invisible while power burned under my skin like fever. My mother had died getting me across the border, whispering promises that someone would find me, that I had a purpose greater than survival. Hide until he finds you. And Kieran had found me. Not in the courtyard today, but 3 years ago in these very woods when I'd been lost and dying of cold. A silver wolf had appeared through the snow, guiding me to safety before vanishing like a dream. Some part of him had known me even then. Even cursed and mindless, he'd protected me. Now it was my turn. It's not your choice, I told Thane, my voice ringing with newfound power. It never was. The primal smiled, revealing teeth that belonged in nightmares. Then we begin. But first, you should know about speakers and their guardians. He moved closer, until I could feel the ancient cold radiating from his form like winter-given consciousness. Speakers aren't random, girl. The power follows bloodlines, yes. but it only awakens when its counterpart appears. Counterpart. My mouth went dry. Every speaker has a bonded guardian. Usually a wolf, but not always. One they're destined to either save or destroy. His gaze moved to Kieran, then back to me. Guess which one you found? My heart stopped. Destined? But I'm from the eastern villages. Kieran is northern royalty. We should never have even met. Your mother fled north when you were 3, Valen interrupted smoothly, and I hated how much he was enjoying this revelation. After your father discovered what you were, she died at the border, protecting you. But you disappeared. Until a healer found a half-frozen child with no memory and a peculiar birthmark hidden beneath layers of cloth. The world tilted. Fragments of memories I'd buried surfaced like corpses from ice. A woman singing, running through snow that burned like fire. Warmth fading as she pressed me into a hollow tree, her voice breaking. Hide, my little wolf speaker. Hide until he finds you.
He'll know you.
Your souls are bound across lifetimes. Hide, my darling. Hide and wait. She knew, I whispered, tears burning my eyes. My mother knew what I was, what I'd become. She knew what you'd awaken, the primal corrected. Now choose. Take the bonds and risk everything, or let Kieran fade into the wolf forever. Either way, the choice belongs to you alone. I looked at Kieran, really looked at him. Saw past the silver fur and amber eyes to the man trapped inside. A man who'd been slowly dying for 3 years, losing pieces of himself to save a kingdom. A man who'd recognized my soul the moment our eyes met. A man who was begging me through our bond to run. To save myself.
To let him go.
Please, his voice broke in my mind. Please, Tessa. Just run. Instead, I knelt beside him, placing my marked wrist against his neck where I could feel his pulse. Too fast, too desperate. Together, I whispered. Or not at all. The moment my skin touched his fur, power erupted from the point of contact. Not violent. Not explosive. Inevitable. Like sunrise or tide, like winter following autumn. Natural and unstoppable and absolutely right. I felt the bond snap free from Thane with an audible crack that echoed across dimensions. Visible chains of light shot through the air, wrapping around my wrists, my throat, my heart. They burrowed into my flesh like living things, and the pain.
God's the pain.
Every nerve in my body screamed as foreign magic invaded. The crown bond was cold authority, demanding absolute obedience. The flesh bond was wild hunger, pure animal instinct that wanted to hunt and kill and feed. The spirit bond was worst of all, Kieran's entire essence flooding into me like a dam breaking. His memories.
His pain.
His love.
Love.
Through the agony, I felt it clearly. Not new affection, but something timeless. Recognition of souls that had been searching for each other across lifetimes, finally coming home. Hold on, the primal commanded, his form becoming fully solid for the first time. The reshaping begins now. But something was wrong. A fourth presence had entered the binding, something that had been hiding in Valen's shadow, waiting for exactly this moment. Did you really think, Valen laughed, the sound wrong and distorted, that I'd come here without insurance? The thing that emerged from his shadow wasn't human or animal or anything that belonged in the waking world. It was hunger given form, corruption made manifest, a void walker, drawn to speaker energy like moths to flame. And it was reaching for me with tentacles made of living darkness. No. Kieran's form exploded with light. He transformed mid-leap, but not into a man. What landed between me and the Void Walker was something else entirely. Half wolf, half human, all predator. The perfect fusion of both forms. Beyond comprehension. Magnificent. Interesting, the primal murmured, and I heard genuine surprise in that ancient voice. She's already changing him. But I couldn't appreciate the transformation. The bonds were burning me from the inside out, 3 different types of magic warring for dominance in my body. And the Void Walker's presence was poison to a speaker's essence. I could feel it trying to drain me, to consume the power I'd just absorbed. Darkness crept into my vision. Colors bled to gray. I heard Thane shouting. Kieran roared. And somewhere in the distance, a horn sounding, deep and terrible and all too familiar. The Eastern Army had arrived. Valen had planned this perfectly. Awaken the speaker. Let her absorb the bonds. Then feast on her power while war raged, and everyone was too distracted to stop him. I'm sorry, I thought toward Kieran as consciousness slipped away. I wasn't strong enough. But his voice came back fierce and unbreakable. You're stronger than any of them know. Hold on, Tessa. Just hold on. We're not finished yet. The last thing I saw before darkness claimed me was the primal stepping forward, his form expanding to impossible size, eyes burning with fury that could unmake worlds. You dare interrupt a speaker's awakening? His voice shook the foundations of reality itself. You dare bring corruption to sacred ground? Lightning split the sky. The Thornvale forest roared to life, trees attacking with ancient rage. And somewhere in the space between heartbeats, I felt myself falling into another realm entirely, a place where the bonds could be reshaped, where Kieran and I could become something unprecedented, if we survived long enough to reach it. Chapter 4. The Space Between Worlds. I woke to the silver mist and whispered memories. Not unconscious, not awake. Somewhere else, a realm that existed in the gaps between heartbeats, in the pause between thought and action. Reality here was fluid, dreamlike, responding to will and emotion rather than physical law. The bonds I'd absorbed pulsed through me like secondary heartbeats, each one pulling in different directions. Crown demanding loyalty, flesh screaming for blood, spirit trying to merge completely with something, someone just out of reach.
Tessa.
Kieran's voice, but not in my head this time. He stood before me in this strange space, neither wolf nor man but pure essence. Beautiful and terrible and completely, utterly himself. I could see through him to something beyond, threads of light connecting to countless points, weaving patterns that looked almost like constellation maps. Where are we? My voice echoed strangely, as if the mist itself was listening. Inside the binding. Inside you. He moved closer, and I realized I could see my own form, translucent, glowing with violet light that pulsed in time with my racing heart. Your mind created this space to protect itself. You're holding all three bonds while they reshape. If your consciousness stayed in the physical world during that process. He trailed off, but I understood. I would have shattered like glass. How long? I asked, studying the threads connecting us. They were beautiful, silver and violet and gold all twisted together. Time moves differently here. Moments in the physical realm. Hours in this place. Maybe longer. His translucent hand reached for my face, but couldn't quite touch, passing through like smoke. I'm not fully here. Part of me is still fighting in the courtyard. Fighting what? Everything. His expression darkened. The Void Walker. Valen's shadow spawn. The Eastern soldiers poured through the gates. Can you feel it? I concentrated, and suddenly I could perceive the physical realm like looking through water. The courtyard had become a battlefield bathed in blood and moonlight. Thane wielded ice and shadow against the Void Walker, his magic a desperate dance of frost and darkness. The primal held back the eastern forces at the gates, his primordial form shifting between wolf and something far more terrifying, teeth and claws and ancient fury given flesh. And Kieran.
God's Kieran.
His physical form fought with savage grace in that unthinkable hybrid shape, standing upright like a man but covered in silver fur, claws that could rend steel, fangs that gleamed in the storm light. He moved between soldiers like death itself, protecting my unconscious body where it lay in the center of the courtyard. He's magnificent. I breathed, watching him tear through enemies who'd been foolish enough to get close to me. That's not me, Kieran said quietly, his essence form flickering with emotion. Not really. That's what you're making me. The bonds are changing, responding to your strength, your will. I'm becoming what you need. I need you free, I insisted, tearing my gaze from the physical battle. Not bound to me the way you were bound to Thane. You need a guardian. He gestured to the threads around us, and I saw them more clearly now, the way they were reorganizing, restructuring. The speaker's essence requires it. It's too powerful to exist without an anchor. That's why the last one exploded. She tried to break free of her guardian completely. Then we find a way to make it different, I said stubbornly. Not a chain. Not a prison. Look closer. He moved beside me, and for a moment our essence forms overlapped, sending sparks of sensation through my consciousness. The crown bond, see how it's dissolving? I watched the golden threads unravel, their authority dissipating like morning fog. It's leaving, transferring to neither of us. That bond was about controlling me, forcing loyalty to the throne. You don't want that, so it's dying. He pointed to another set of threads, silver and pulsing with wild energy. The flesh bond is strengthening, but look at how it's changed. Not a chain anymore. More like a bridge. I finished, seeing it clearly now. The connection between us that allowed communication, that let us feel each other's emotions. We can cross to each other, but we're not trapped. And the spirit bond. His voice dropped to something almost reverent. I looked at the violet threads wrapping around both our essence forms, weaving us together in patterns so complex they made my head spin. They weren't just connecting us, they were merging us, blending the edges where I ended, and he began. We're combining, I whispered, equal parts awed and terrified. Only if you allow it. Kieran's translucent hand hovered near mine. You can still sever the connections. Free us both completely. I'd be human again, powerless, mortal, but free. And you'd be a speaker without an anchor. You might survive it. The primal seems to think you're strong enough. And what would happen to you? I asked, studying his face, sharp features, storm gray eyes with gold flecks, midnight hair that fell past his shoulders even in this form. I'd be human again, he repeated softly. No wolf. No hybrid form. No power. His essence flickered with emotion I couldn't quite read, but alive. Free to choose my own path. And, is that what you want? His laugh was bitter. What do I want? The mist around us swirled faster, responding to his emotional turbulence. I want what I've wanted since the moment I first saw you through Fenris's eyes, lost in the thorn veil 3 years ago. But that's not important. It's the only thing that's important. I reached out, and this time when our hands met, they didn't pass through. Our fingers intertwined, solid and real in this space between spaces. The moment we touched, memories flooded between us like water through broken dams. His childhood in the palace, Thane teaching him to fight, Valen's early cruelties hidden behind smiles. My village years, learning herbs, hiding my abilities, my mother's face as she pushed me into that tree. The moment Thane forced him to drink poison, then the forest spirit's bargain, the transformation that saved his life but stole his humanity. The night I nearly died in the snow, and a silver wolf appeared like salvation itself, guiding me home even though he shouldn't have had enough consciousness to care. 3 years of slow dissolution, watching himself fade into beast mind while Thane watched in helpless guilt. 3 years of dreaming about amber eyes, wondering why wolves called to me in languages I shouldn't understand. The recognition in the courtyard, souls finding each other after lifetimes of searching. You were always there. I realized, tears burning in this realm where I shouldn't be able to cry. Every time I was in danger, every time I ventured too close to the thorn veil, there was always a silver wolf watching from the shadows. I couldn't stay away. His hand tightened on mine. Some part of me knew, even beast mad and broken. You were important. You were mine to protect. Through our joined hands, I felt the simple truth of the bonds. They weren't just magical chains. They were potential, raw, unformed possibility waiting to be shaped by our choices. Together, I said, the word carrying weight in this realm where intention was power. We reshape them together. That's not how it works. It is now. I pulled him closer, our essence forms blending at the edges. I'm a speaker. You're descended from the primal himself. Between us, we have enough power to rewrite the rules entirely. The silver mist turned gold. The bonds stopped pulling in different directions and began to spiral together, weaving themselves into something unprecedented. Not a chain, not even a bridge, but a union. A choice made manifest. Energy flooded through us, through me, through the space we occupied. This wasn't like anything in ancient history. We were creating something new, a bond based not on dominance or imprisonment, but on partnership, mutual strength, chosen connection. Unthinkable. The primal's voice echoed through the space, and I felt his presence observing from beyond the mist. They're creating a soul bond. True fusion of speaker and guardian. It hasn't been done in 1,000 years. Stop them. Valen's panicked shout filtered through from the physical world. If they complete it, the power. But it was too late. The moment our essences fully merged, the world exploded with light. I gasped back to consciousness in the physical realm, violet energy radiating from every pore. Kieran stood beside me, still in his hybrid form, but different somehow. More controlled, more himself. Our hands were clasped, and where we touched, light pulsed with the rhythm of two hearts beating as one. The Void Walker screamed, a sound that shattered windows across Stormwatch Palace. Creatures of pure darkness couldn't stand against what we'd become, living light, bonded souls, the perfect fusion of speaker and guardian magic. I looked at Kieran, and through our completed bond, I felt his question before he spoke it. Together? Always. We moved as one, essence flowing between us like breath. I spoke words in the old tongue I'd never learned, and he shaped them into reality with claw and fang and ancient power. The Void Walker tried to flee, tried to dissolve back into shadow, but we were everywhere. Light in its darkness, order in its chaos, two souls operating as one perfect weapon. With a final shriek that set my teeth on edge, the Void Walker dissolved into nothingness. Just gone. Erased from reality by power that transcended individual strength. The Eastern forces faltered, staring at us with open terror. Without Valen's shadow creatures maintaining the assault, they were just soldiers facing the primal's fury and a newly bonded pair whose combined strength defied comprehension. Retreat! Someone screamed, and they fled like water from broken glass. Leaving Valen standing alone in the courtyard, his face twisted with rage and something that looked almost like fear. "This isn't over," he snarled, but his voice shook. "The old laws. The old laws are dead," the primal interrupted, solidifying fully beside us. His form was less smoke now, more flesh, ancient and powerful, but somehow approving. They've created something new, a bond of choice, not force. The first true partnership between speaker and guardian in 1,000 years. The Eastern Dominion will never accept. The Eastern Dominion will accept it, Morwen said, appearing with a scroll that glowed with binding magic, or face the combined might of the North, the Shadow Realm, and the first soul-bonded pair in living memory. Choose your next words carefully, Valen. But I wasn't listening anymore. The bond's creation had taken everything I had. My knees buckled, vision swimming as exhaustion crashed over me like a wave. Kieran caught me, his form shifting smoothly back to human as he lifted me into his arms. For the first time, I saw his true face clearly, sharp cheekbones, storm-gray eyes with gold flecks like molten metal, midnight hair that fell past his shoulders. Beautiful in a wild, dangerous way that matched his wolf. "I've got you," he murmured, and through our new bond, I felt the truth of it. Not possession.
Partnership. Not ownership. Choice.
The bond, Thane said quietly, approaching slowly with his hands carefully visible, non-threatening. "Is it complete?" "Complete," Kieran answered, not looking away from me. "We're bound by choice, not magic. She can release me at any time." "But you won't," the primal said. It wasn't a question. I managed to shake my head, using what little strength I had left. "Never." Then it settled. The ancient being turned to Valen, and his smile was all teeth. "Leave now, grandson. And if you ever threaten her again, you'll face not just the North, but every wolf in every realm. The speaker has returned, and we protect our own." Valen fled without another word, though something in his retreat suggested calculation rather than true defeat. He'd lost this battle, but his mind was already working on the next move. As the adrenaline faded, I became aware of an awkward truth that would have made me laugh if I had the energy. Kieran was very, very naked. His transformation had shredded whatever clothes he'd been wearing, leaving him bare except for the moonlight painting his skin silver. "Perhaps," Morwen said with barely concealed amusement, "we should continue this inside. With clothing." But before anyone could move, another horn sounded. Not eastern, not northern, but from the Thorn Vale itself. The trees that had walked with the primal suddenly bowed, every branch bending toward me in a gesture of unmistakable reverence. "What?" I couldn't finish the question. "They recognize you," the primal said, and I heard something almost like pride in that ancient voice. "The speaker has awakened fully. The forest acknowledges its new guardian." Through my bond with Kieran, I felt his mixture of awe and concern. We changed everything tonight: the nature of bonds, the balance of power, the very fabric of magic itself. And somehow, I knew with bone-deep certainty that this was only the beginning. The real test was yet to come. Chapter 5. The Price of Power. 3 days had passed since the soul bond's creation, and I still couldn't control the side effects. Every emotion I felt rippled through Stormwatch Palace like physical force. My laughter made flowers bloom in the frozen courtyards, impossible winter roses that shouldn't exist in this climate. My frustration cracked windows across the eastern wing. And my dreams brought primeval things crawling from the Thornvale to peer through the palace walls with curious, hungry eyes. "Focus," Morwen instructed, placing another crystal before me on the stone table. "Channel the excess energy into the stone. Let it absorb what you can't contain." I tried. Really, I did. But the moment my fingers touched the smooth surface, violet light exploded from the contact point. The crystal shattered into rainbow fragments that scattered across the floor like deadly confetti. "The 20th one today. Perhaps we need a different approach," Kieran said from the doorway, and my heart did that stupid flutter thing it had been doing every time I saw him. He'd taken to wearing simple black clothing that somehow made him look more dangerous than his hybrid form, fitted pants and a loose shirt that did nothing to hide the predatory grace in his movements. Through our bond, I felt his constant concern, his frustration that he couldn't help me, his guilt that binding himself to me had caused this chaos. "The power isn't meant to be contained," I said, standing abruptly and sending papers flying off the table with an unconscious burst of energy. "It feels wrong, like trying to breathe underwater." "Speakers of the past," Morwen began, "didn't have soul bonds," I interrupted, pacing the room with restless energy crackling around me. "We've created something unprecedented, and we're trying to control it with old methods that don't apply anymore." A knock interrupted us, sharp and urgent. Thane entered without waiting for permission, his expression grave. "We have a problem." Through the windows, I saw them. Ravens. Hundreds of them circled the palace in a black cloud that blotted out the morning sun. But these weren't ordinary birds. Their eyes glowed sickly green, and where their shadows fell, the impossible winter roses I'd created withered to ash. "Plague birds," Morwen whispered, her face going pale. "But they've been extinct for 3 centuries. Since the last speaker died," Thane confirmed, his ice-blue eyes finding mine. "They're drawn to concentrated power." Understanding hit me like ice water. "They're drawn to me." "Not drawn," a new voice said, and we all spun toward the sound. A figure materialized from the shadows near the fireplace, a woman in robes that seemed to absorb light, her face hidden beneath a deep hood. Magic radiated from her in waves that made my newly awakened senses scream warnings. "Summoned," she continued, lowering her hood to reveal features that made me gasp. She looked exactly like the portrait in the healer's hall, the one I'd studied countless times while grinding herbs. Sharp cheekbones, silver blonde hair, eyes the color of storm clouds. The last speaker, dead 300 years. "I am Seraphine," she said, or rather, what remained of her. Her form was translucent, ghostly, caught between life and death in a way that made my skin crawl. An echo preserved in the spaces between realms, waiting for my successor to awaken. Her spectral eyes fixed on me with intensity that stole my breath. "We need to talk about what you've truly unleashed." Before anyone could respond, she waved her translucent hand. The world around us froze. Thane mid-word, his mouth open in warning. Morwen reaches for weapon. Even dust motes suspended in the air like tiny stars. Only Kieran and I remained unfrozen, protected by our soul bond. "The soul bond," Seraphine continued as if reality-altering magic was perfectly normal, "is not just unprecedented. It's apocalyptic." "You're lying," Kieran snarled, moving protectively between us despite her ghostly state. "Am I?" She gestured toward the windows. "Look closer at those birds." I looked, and with my awakened sight, I saw the truth. The plague ravens weren't just corrupted, they were wrong. Pieces of different realms stitched together into living impossibilities. Wings from the shadow realm, eyes from the void, beaks that existed in 3 dimensions simultaneously. "The barriers between worlds are breaking down," Seraphine said, her voice heavy with ancient sorrow. "Your bond is too powerful for reality to contain. Every moment it exists, that tier widens. Every breath you take together weakens the walls between dimensions."
No.
The word came out as a whisper. Through our bond, I felt Kieran's rising panic matching my own. "Yes." Seraphine moved closer, her form flickering like a candle flame. "I tried to warn the primal, but he's too old, too removed from mortal concerns to understand. Your bond will either reshape the world entirely, which would kill billions, or destroy it completely when the dimensions collapse into each other. There must be a way to stabilize it," I insisted, my mind racing through everything Morwen had taught me, every scrap of ancient knowledge I'd absorbed. "There is." Her expression was sorrowful, pitying. "One of you must die."
No.
Kieran and I said it simultaneously, our voices overlapping. "Then both worlds will collapse," Seraphine said flatly. "The human realm and the shadow realm will collide, creating chaos that will consume everything. Every person you've ever known, every place you've loved, all of it will be torn apart as reality tries to exist in 2 states at once." She paused, her form flickering more violently. "He's coming."
Who?
My voice came out strangled. "The one who killed me." Fear, genuine terror, crossed her ghostly features. "The Harvester. He feeds on speaker energy and has been doing so for centuries. And you." She looked at me with something like pity. "You've just become the most powerful source in existence." The frozen world shattered back into motion. Seraphine's echo vanished like smoke, but her warning lingered like poison in my mind. "Immediate evacuation," Thane was finishing, clearly continuing a sentence that had been interrupted by Seraphine's time manipulation. "The plague birds are just the beginning." As if summoned by his words, the temperature plummeted. Ice formed on the windows in patterns that spelled words in the old tongue, angular, ancient letters that seemed to writhe when I looked at them too long. "Give her to me." "He's here." I breathed, my new powers screaming danger so loudly I wanted to cover my ears. The palace shook. Stones that had stood for centuries cracked with sounds like breaking bones. Through our bond, I felt Kieran's wolf rising to the surface, ready to fight, ready to die protecting me. Then came the voice, not heard but felt, vibrating through bones and souls, and the very fabric of reality. "Little speaker, you've made yourself so bright, so easy to find." A figure walked through the palace wall, as if it were mist. Tall, gaunt, wrapped in chains made of captured souls that writhed and screamed silently. Where his feet touched, the floor aged centuries in seconds, smooth stone crumbling to dust, then less than dust. The Harvester. He looked almost human if you didn't look too closely. but his eyes were empty voids. His skin stretched too tight over bones that were the wrong shape, and when he smiled, I saw teeth that had been filed to points. 300 years I've waited, he said, his voice like grinding stone over glass. 300 years since I drained the last one dry. He raised his hand, fingers ending in blackened claws. You'll last longer, I think. All that power, so carefully bonded. I can taste it from here. I felt it then, a pull on my very essence, like invisible hooks trying to tear the energy from my body. The soul bond reacted violently, power exploding outward in a shockwave that sent everyone but Kieran staggering. Kieran transformed instantly, but not into wolf or even his hybrid form. What emerged was something new, a creature of pure energy and fury, simultaneously all his forms and none of them, existing as possibly made flesh. Our combined essence created a barrier the harvester couldn't penetrate, violet and silver light weaving together into a wall of absolute protection. Interesting, the harvester mused, tilting his head at an angle that was subtly wrong. You've bound yourself to a guardian so thoroughly that attacking one means attacking both. He pulled something from his robes, a crystal containing swirling darkness that made my stomach turn. Do you know what this is? The crystal pulsed, and Seraphine's echo reappeared inside it. But wrong. Twisted. Her face contorted in eternal, silent screaming. I kept her soul, the harvester said conversationally, as if discussing the weather rather than 3 centuries of torment. Speakers are so rare, you see. I like to savor them. Draw out the feeding over decades, centuries, if I can manage it. Rage flooded through me. Not just mine, but Kieran's, amplified through our bond until it felt like nuclear fire in my veins. The palace windows exploded outward in a shower of glittering ice. The Thornvale forest responded to my fury, roots bursting through the courtyard floor, reaching for the harvester with thorn-covered tendrils. Yes, the harvester's laugh was ecstasy. Show me that strength. Feed me your anger. Too late, I realized my mistake. He was feeding on my emotional output, growing stronger with each burst of power. The chains around his body glowed brighter, the captured souls writhing faster. Tessa, stop. Morwen shouted. You're giving him what he wants. But I couldn't stop. The bond was a feedback loop, my anger feeding Kieran's wolf, his fury feeding mine, spiraling up and up until we were going to destroy everything trying to destroy this monster. Then Thane did something unexpected. He drove his sword into the ground and spoke words I'd never heard. Not the old tongue, but something older, primordial. Words that tasted of darkness and winter and ancient bargains best left forgotten. The shadows in the room responded, but not to attack. They wrapped around Kieran and me like a cooling blanket, dampening our rage, breaking the feedback loop before it consumed us both. Shadow magic. The harvester hissed, and for the first time, I heard something other than hunger in his voice. You dare use my own element against me? I learned from the best, Thane said coldly, his ice-blue eyes burning with fury. From you, when you were my teacher, before you revealed your true nature. The revelation stunned everyone. Thane had studied under this monster? Oh, didn't I mention? The harvester's smile was vicious. Young Thane, here was my apprentice 20 years ago. How do you think he gained the knowledge to bind his own brother? I taught him everything. To stop you, Thane snarled. I learned your weaknesses. Did you? The harvester moved faster than sight, suddenly holding Thane by the throat, lifting him off the ground with impossible strength. Or did I let you think you did? Let him go. I screamed, power building again despite the shadow dampening. Make me, little speaker. His empty eyes found mine. Show me the true extent of your bond. Unleash it all. I started to, God's help me, I started to let everything loose. But Kieran's voice cut through the rage.
Wait. Look.
Through the chaos, I saw it. Thane's hand, hidden from the harvester's view, making deliberate signals. A plan. Trust him, Kieran's mental voice urged. Be ready. Thane's eyes met mine, and he mouthed a single word.
Now.
He grabbed the crystal containing Seraphine's soul and shattered it against the harvester's chest. The released essence exploded outward, 300 years of captured speaker's strength suddenly free. The harvester screamed, his grip loosening as ancient power burned through his stolen body. But instead of dissipating, Seraphine's energy flew toward me, recognizing its successor. No, the harvester's scream was genuine terror now. Too late. The essence merged with mine, not corrupting but completing something. The knowledge of centuries flooded through me, every speaker who had ever lived, loved, and died. Their combined wisdom, their power, their warnings. And with it came understanding. You're not just a harvester, I said, my voice echoing with the power of every speaker before me. You're a failed speaker. One who corrupted his own essence, trying to live forever. The harvester's face contorted with rage and ancient shame. I am eternal. I am. You're nothing. With the combined strength of every speaker who had ever existed, I reached into his chest and pulled out his corrupted core, a withered, blackened thing that might once have been a soul. He crumbled to ash, centuries catching up in seconds. His screams faded to whispers, then silence. But as his form disintegrated, he laughed one final time. You think you've won? The tear between worlds remains. The soul bond still threatens everything. You've only delayed the inevitable. His ashes scattered on a wind that shouldn't exist indoors, leaving only his final warning. Choose quickly, speaker. Save your bond or save your world. You can't have both. I collapsed, overwhelmed by the inherited energy. Kieran caught me, returning to human form as he held me close. The tear, I gasped, feeling it now through my expanded awareness. A wound in reality itself, growing wider with each moment our bond existed. He was right. We're destroying everything just by being together. Through the destroyed windows, we could see it, a crack in the sky spreading like broken glass, revealing glimpses of the shadow realm beyond. Nightmares seeping through, corrupting reality wherever they touched. We'd won the battle against the harvester, but we might have already lost the war. Chapter 6. Blood and Birthright. The terror in reality widened with each passing hour. Through it, nightmares seeped into our world like poison through a wound, creatures of shadow and hunger that shouldn't exist under any sun. Things with too many limbs, eyes that wept darkness, voices that spoke in frequencies that made mortals bleed from their ears. Stormwatch Palace had been evacuated. Only essential defenders remained, along with those of us desperately searching for a solution that didn't involve death. There has to be another way, I insisted for the 100th time, poring over primordial texts in the Primal's personal archives. The ancient being had summoned volumes that materialized from smoke when he'd learned of our crisis, leather-bound books written in languages that shifted and changed as I read them, adapting to my understanding. Every source says the same thing, Morwen replied, exhaustion making her look older than her years. Dark circles shadowed her violet eyes, and her obsidian crown sat crooked on her silver hair. A soul bond can only be severed by death. Or, she paused, reading further into a text so old the pages crumbled at her touch. Or what? Kieran demanded from where he stood by the window, watching the tears spread like cracks in ice. He hadn't left my side since the harvester's defeat, our bond humming with shared anxiety. Or transformations so complete that the original souls no longer exist. Morwen looked up, her expression grave. It's called the Phoenix, right? Both participants essentially die and are reborn as something else entirely. That's still death, Thane said from where he monitored the tear's growth through a scrying mirror, a disk of polished obsidian that showed real-time images of reality unraveling across the kingdom. Villages disappearing into pockets of void. The Thornvale forest fighting shadow creatures that poured through dimensional rifts. No, the primal materialized beside us, his ancient form more solid than I'd ever seen it. Its evolution. Transcendence. But the risk. Tell us, I said, my voice steady despite the fear coiling in my gut. The primeval being's eyes, still that impossible kaleidoscope of colors, fixed on me with uncomfortable intensity. You would need to enter the tier itself. Go to the place between worlds where reality is fluid, laws are suggestions, and consciousness can dissolve like salt in water. And then, Kieran moved closer, his hand finding mine automatically. The contact sent warmth through our bond, steadying us both. Then you reshape not just your bond, but the very nature of what speakers and guardians are. Become something that bridges both realms naturally, living anchors that maintain the boundary rather than tear it apart. But, I prompted, knowing there was always a cost. But most who enter that space never return, the primal said quietly. Reality, without rules, tends to dissolve consciousness. You could forget who you are, what you're trying to do. Become lost in infinite possibility, wandering forever between worlds as mindless echoes. Through our bond, I felt Kieran's immediate decision. He would risk anything to save the world, to save me. But I also felt his deeper fear, the one that made his soul ache. Losing himself meant losing us. There's something else, I said, pieces clicking together in my mind. Seraphine's inherited knowledge provided context that made terrible sense. The harvester said speakers are rare, but he didn't say why. What happened to them all? The primal's expression darkened. They evolved. Successful phoenix writes throughout history. Each pair that survived became something beyond mortal understanding, guardians of reality itself, existing in spaces between dimensions where they could maintain the barriers. So they're still out there? Hope sparked in my chest. Other soul-bonded pairs who could help. They're beyond help. Beyond communication. Morwen closed the ancient text gently. They exist in a state we can't perceive, serving a purpose we can barely comprehend. If you succeed in the Phoenix right, you'll join them. But you won't be Tessa and Kieran anymore. You'll be something else entirely. A scream interrupted us, echoing from the courtyard. Through the windows, we saw the tear had doubled in size. Shadow creatures poured through in waves, held back only by Thane's ice barriers and the palace guards' desperate fighting. We're out of time, I said, standing abruptly. We do it now. Wait. The voice made everyone freeze. Valen strode through the doorway, but not as the enemy we knew. His usual arrogant bearing was gone, replaced by desperate urgency. His dark clothes were torn, blood-stained, and his eyes, those void-like eyes, held something I'd never seen before.
Fear.
Genuine, bone-deep terror. Before you potentially destroy yourselves, he said, breathing hard like he'd been running, you should know the truth. We don't have time for your games, Thane snarled, hand moving to his sword. Not a game. A confession. Valen pulled something from his torn cloak, a timeless amulet, its center holding a fragment of crystallized starlight that pulsed with soft, steady light. This belonged to the first speaker, your ancestral grandmother, Tessa. Everyone froze. And mine, he continued quietly. We're related? The words came out strangled. Cousins, many times removed. Valen's laugh was bitter, self-mocking. The speaker bloodline split centuries ago. One branch fled east, one west. I've known since I first saw your birthmark in Thane's initial reports. The Moonwatcher's mark is unmistakable to those who know the signs. Then why? Thane's voice was dangerous, ice forming on his fingertips. Why try to claim her? Why bring war to my gates? Because I'm a fool, Valen said simply, and the honest self-loathing in his voice was shocking. A fool who thought control meant safety. The harvester visited me years ago, taught me shadow magic, warned me that another speaker would awaken and draw every corruption in existence to our realms. He held out the amulet toward me. I thought if I controlled you, bound you to the east, I could protect you from those who would use you. From things like the harvester, void walkers, the plague ravens. You brought a void walker yourself, I said coldly. I know. Shame colored his features. I was desperate, terrified. The harvester had been hunting our bloodline for centuries. I thought I thought if I awakened you under controlled circumstances, I could bind protective wards before the real threats arrived. You're asking us to believe you did this out of concern? Morwen's voice dripped with skepticism. I'm asking nothing. Valen stepped closer, holding out the amulet with shaking hands. I'm confessing. And giving you this. It won't guarantee success in the Phoenix, right? But it might help you remember who you are in that space. Our grandmother used it to anchor herself during her own transformation attempt. She died, I said flatly. She died because she went alone, without a true bond. He met my eyes, and I saw centuries of family guilt reflected there. But watching you create something I thought was unthinkable, something beautiful and terrifying, I realized control is the opposite of what speakers need. You need freedom.
Choice.
Partnership. The amulet pulsed with warm light as I took it. Immediately, I felt something shift, like a compass finding true north. An anchor point that could guide consciousness through chaos. Another section of sky cracked. The tear was spreading exponentially now, racing toward critical mass. Thank you, I said simply, and saw surprise flicker across Valen's face. Don't thank me yet. His expression turned grim. The eastern forces I brought. Most fled when the harvester appeared, but some remained. Not to fight you, but to help hold the breach. They're dying out there. Through the windows, I could see it now. Eastern soldiers fighting alongside Northern guards, united against dimensional horrors that threatened everyone equally. If we don't return, I began, but Kieran cut me off. We will. His certainty flowed through our bond, warm and absolute. We have to. The primal stepped forward, touching both our foreheads with his ethereal paws. Remember, he said, his ancient voice heavy with importance. In that space, will and memory are the only real things. Hold tight to who you are, why you're there, and whatever you see, whatever tempts you, don't let go of each other. We nodded, understanding the weight of his warning. One more thing. Thane moved closer, and for the first time since discovering Kieran's curse, he met his brother's eyes directly. I'm sorry. For the binding, for the choices I made. I thought I was saving you, but I was just imprisoning us both. I know, Kieran said quietly. Through our bond, I felt his forgiveness. Complicated, painful, but real. You did what you thought was right. Now we do the same. The brothers clasped forearms in a warrior's farewell, and I saw moisture gleaming in Thane's ice-blue eyes. Come back, he whispered. Both of you. We will, I promised, hoping it was true. Morwen pressed a vial of silver liquid into my palm. Moonwell water. If you need to ground yourself, taste it. It will remind you of the mortal realm, of solid earth and real sky. I tucked it carefully into my pocket alongside the starlight amulet. Ready? Kieran asked, transforming into his hybrid form, the shape that represented perfect balance between human and wolf, the form our bond had created. I climbed onto his back, feeling our essences align through the contact. Together or not at all. Then let's go show reality what we're made of, he said, and I heard the wild grin in his voice. With a powerful leap that defied gravity, we dove directly into the tear. Reality shattered. We tumbled through nothingness that was simultaneously everything, colors that didn't exist, sounds that were also textures, time flowing backward and forward and sideways all at once. I saw infinite versions of ourselves. Realities where we never met, where we were enemies, where we were already dead, where we ruled kingdoms together, where we were simple healers in a peaceful village, where we were gods, where we were nothing at all. The temptation to explore these possibilities was overwhelming. To step sideways into a reality where everything was easier, where our bond didn't threaten existence itself. Focus. Kieran's voice anchored me. Remember why we're here. The amulet burned against my chest, its starlight cutting through the chaos. I pulled it out, and its glow created a small sphere of stability around us. In this formless space, I could see the truth of our bond clearly now. Not a wound in reality, but a concentration of power too dense for a single dimension to contain. We need to spread ourselves thinner, I said, understanding flooding through me. Not break the bond, but stretch it across realities. Become guardians of the boundary itself. Neither fully in one world nor another. Kieran realized, his hybrid form shifting, becoming more ethereal. Existing across multiple dimensions simultaneously. It would mean sacrifice, I warned, feeling the weight of the choice. Never fully belonging anywhere. Always partially in other realms. Losing the simple life we might have had. Through our bond, I felt his answer before he spoke. I lost that life 3 years ago. What matters is that we're together. Then let's do something unthinkable, I said. Together. We reached for the edges of the tear, not to close it, but to become it. To transform into living bridges between realms. The pain was indescribable. Every atom of our beings was pulled apart and rewoven, stretched across dimensions, transformed into something that existed in all places and no place simultaneously. The temptation to let go, to simply dissolve into peaceful nothingness, was overwhelming. But then I heard them, voices from the mortal realm. Thane shouting orders, holding the line. Morwen chanting protective spells, her voice hoarse from hours of casting. The primal howling calling us home. Valen soldiers and Thane's guards fight side by side, believing we could save them. And deeper, through layers of reality, I heard more. Every person we'd ever helped. Every life is touched by the speaker's gift. They needed us. Not as individuals, but as guardians. As anchors maintaining the boundaries that kept their world safe. Together, Kieran and I thought as one. We pulled ourselves back together, but not as we were. We were formed as something new, still Tessa and Kieran, but also more. Guardians of the boundary. Living bridges between realms. Our bond didn't contain power anymore. It distributed it safely across dimensions. The tiers didn't close. It transformed, becoming a controlled gateway, a valve preventing reality from building pressure until it exploded. And we were its eternal sentinels. When we emerged back into the mortal realm, everything had changed. I could see all dimensions simultaneously now, feel every realm's heartbeat. Kieran stood beside me, both wolf and man simultaneously, existing in multiple forms at once. Our hands were clasped, and where we touched, light pulsed, not violet or silver, but prismatic, containing all colors and none. You did it. The primal breathed, and for the first time, I heard awe in that ancient voice. You've become what speakers were always meant to be. But I barely heard him. Through my expanded consciousness, I could feel it, other tiers forming across the world. Other places where reality grew thin, where dimensions threatened to collide. Our work had just begun. Chapter 7, Between Worlds. 6 months later. I stood at the boundary between worlds, watching sunrise paint the sky in colors that existed in 3 dimensions simultaneously, mortal gold bleeding into shadow realm violet, touched with edges of void silver that belonged to neither. This particular tear, now stabilized into a permanent gateway, overlooked a valley where the Thorn Vale met the eastern plains. It had become a pilgrimage site where beings from multiple realms came to witness the unthinkable made real. 2 souls transformed into living bridges, guardians who existed everywhere and nowhere at once. You're brooding again, Kieran said, materializing beside me in his preferred form, mostly human but with wolf eyes and slightly pointed ears, marks of his perpetual existence between shapes. Observing, I corrected, leaning into his warmth. Even transformed, even existing across dimensions, some things remained constant. His presence still steadied me. His touch still sent sparks through whatever passed for my nervous system now. Through our evolved bond, I felt his amusement. We didn't need words anymore. Our consciousness existed in a state of partial fusion, thoughts flowing between us like breath. But we used them anyway, holding on to the human habit like a cherished memory of what we'd been. The Council wants an answer, he said gently, referring to the High Council of Realms, a new governing body formed after our transformation. Representatives from the mortal kingdoms, the Shadow Realm, Even the void spaces between had gathered to create order from the chaos our awakening had revealed. I sighed, the sound rippling across 3 dimensions. They want us to train the others. After our transformation, something unprecedented had happened. Dormant speaker bloodlines across the world had awakened. Young people were manifesting abilities, bonding with guardian creatures, wolves, ravens, serpents, even shadow beings from the other realms. Creating smaller tiers they couldn't control, threatening localized reality collapses. 17 awakened pairs in 6 months. 17 potential catastrophes. We can't teach what we became, I said, watching a group of pilgrims approach through the valley below, humans and shadow folk walking together, something unthinkable before the barriers had thinned. It wasn't just skill or knowledge. It was choice, love, desperation. A perfect storm of circumstances that can't be replicated. Kieran took my hand, and where we touched, reality shimmered, the fabric between dimensions responding to our connection. But we can teach them to find their own way. Show them that bonds don't have to be chains. That power doesn't require sacrifice of self. Through the gateway, I watched Thane approaching from the mortal side. He'd changed too. The shadow magic he'd learned from the Harvester no longer corrupted him. Instead, it had been refined, purified, making him the perfect ruler for this new age where realms intersected freely. Beside him walked Valen. The brothers had reconciled during the crisis, united by necessity that had gradually transformed into genuine partnership. Their combined kingdoms had become the first truly integrated realm where humans and shadow beings coexisted, where the old fears had given way to cautious cooperation. The new speakers have arrived, Thane called up, his voice carrying easily across the dimensional barrier. 3 pairs, all bonded within the last month. I shifted my perception to see them more clearly, viewing them through multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. The first pair was classic, a young woman with copper hair and her bonded wolf, their connection creating small localized storms wherever they walked. The girl couldn't have been more than 17, and terror radiated from her in waves that rippled across realities. The second pair was unusual, a dark-skinned man and his raven companion, their bond manifesting as shadow wings that flickered in and out of existence. The raven perched on his shoulder, and I could see the threads of power connecting them, strong but unstable, threatening to tear them both apart. The third pair was most unexpected, 2 humans whose speaker energies had bonded to each other rather than to guardian animals. A phenomenon I'd never heard of in any historical text. Their merged power created a loop that bent reality around them in a perfect sphere, isolating them from both realms. "Bring them up," I said, steeling myself. As they climbed the crystalline stairs I'd formed from compressed reality, solid in the mortal realm but translucent when viewed from the shadow dimension, I remembered my first moments with Kieran in that courtyard. How unthinkable it had all seemed. How terrified I'd been. How human. "What do we tell them?" Kieran asked softly as they approached, his hand squeezing mine. I thought of Seraphine's echo, trapped for centuries. The Harvester's corruption, feeding on power he couldn't control. The Primal's timeless wisdom, watching generation after generation make the same mistakes. All the speakers before us who had tried and failed, or succeeded and vanished into legend. The truth, I decided. That power isn't a gift or curse, but a choice. That bonds aren't chains, but bridges. That sometimes saving the world means becoming something beyond it. The first pair reached us, the girl with copper hair and her silver wolf. Both trembled with barely controlled energy, power crackling around them in visible arcs that made the air taste like ozone and moonlight. "Lady Tessa," the girl whispered, her voice shaking. "Lord Kieran, we're honored to." "Just Tessa," I interrupted gently, smiling to put her at ease.
"And this is Kieran."
"We're not lords or ladies anymore. We're—" I paused, looking at my bonded, my partner, my other half who existed across infinite realities with me. "Guides," Kieran finished, his wolf eyes warm. "And we're going to teach you not to become us, but to become something entirely your own." The girl's eyes widened with hope, and through my dimensional sight, I saw her bond with her wolf pulse with renewed strength. The raven-bonded man stepped forward next, his shadow wings flickering nervously. "Is it true," he asked, "do you exist in all realms simultaneously? That you can never truly die?" "It's true," I said. "But it's also true that we can never truly live as we once did. We gave up simple mortality, peaceful sleep, the comfort of belonging to one place. We exist in service to the boundaries, maintaining balance forever." "That sounds lonely," the third pair's female half said, one of the human-bonded duo. Her partner stood close beside her, their merged aura pulsing protectively. "It would be," Kieran said, "without each other. That's the first lesson. A bond is only as strong as the choice that maintains it. Force creates chains. Choice creates strength." In the distance, another tear was forming. I felt it like a whisper across dimensions, reality thinning near the northern glaciers where ancient magic still pooled in forgotten valleys.
Not a wound this time.
A doorway, waiting for its guardians to arrive. "Come," I said, gesturing to all three pairs. "Let's begin your training. And the first thing you need to understand is this. You are not broken. You are not cursed. You are not mistaken." I looked at each of them in turn, remembering my own journey from terrified apprentice to dimensional guardian. You are awakened. And that means you have choices our ancestors never had. We're going to teach you how to use them. As we walked toward the new year together, I heard the primals howl echoing across realms, approval, pride, and promise. The age of isolated speakers hiding in fear was over. The time of connected guardians, bridging all realities with purpose and partnership, had begun. The training ground I'd created existed in a pocket dimension, stable enough for mortal bodies but fluid enough to practice reality manipulation safely. It looked like a meadow under eternal twilight, where flowers from 3 different realms grew side by side, mortal roses, shadow lilies, and void crystals that bloomed like ice. "Before we begin," I said, gathering the 3 pairs in a circle, "I need you to understand what you're truly dealing with." I gestured, and the meadow shifted. Suddenly we stood in a vast library where every book contained the memories of a speaker who'd come before. Thousands of volumes stretching into infinity. Every speaker faces a choice, Kieran explained, his form shifting slightly, more wolf now, demonstrating the fluidity we'd mastered. Control the power, or let it control you. Bind your guardian, or partner with them. Serve yourself, or serve the balance. The wrong choices lead to corruption, I continued, pulling a specific book from the shelves. It opened to reveal images of the harvester's transformation. A young man drunk on power, slowly becoming the monster we'd destroyed. The right choices lead to evolution. But right isn't universal. What works for us might not work for you. The copper-haired girl, she'd introduced herself as Saren, raised her hand tentatively. "How do we know which choice is right?" "You listen," I said, kneeling beside her wolf. "Not just to the bond, but to yourself."
"What do you want?"
"Not what others expect, not what ancient laws demand. What does your soul need?" The wolf pressed his head against my palm, and I felt the chaos of his bond with Saren, powerful but terrified, neither understanding how to navigate their new connection. "You're both afraid," I observed gently. "Saren, you're afraid of hurting him. And you." I addressed the wolf directly, speaking in the language only speakers and their bonded could hear. "You're afraid of losing yourself to the bond." The wolf's amber eyes widened in surprise that I'd understood. "That fear is healthy," Kieran said, shifting back to his mostly human form. "It means you respect the power you share. Now you need to transform that fear into trust."
"How?"
Saren asked, desperation creeping into her voice. "By being honest," I said simply. "Tell him what you're afraid of. Let him tell you his fears. A bond built on truth is unbreakable. A bond built on assumptions shatters at the first real test." I stood, addressing all 3 pairs now. "Your first exercise. Communicate. Not through the bond, not through instinct. Use words. Tell your partner 3 things they don't know about you. 3 fears, 3 hopes, 3 truths you've been hiding. That's it. The raven-bonded man, Jasper, sounded skeptical. That's great training? That's the foundation, Kieran corrected, a hint of alpha authority creeping into his voice. Everything else builds from honest communication. Tessa and I survived the Phoenix, right, because we knew each other's souls. Because we'd shared our darkest fears and deepest hopes. Power without trust is just destruction waiting to happen. The human-bonded pair, Rhea and Kala, exchanged glances, and I saw the complexity in their connection. They loved each other, that was clear. But they were also terrified of what their merged bond meant, of losing individual identity in their fusion. You two especially need this exercise, I said gently. Human-to-human bonds are rarer than wolf bonds and more dangerous. Without a guardian's natural anchor to the physical world, you risk dissolving into pure energy. Your individual identities are what keep you stable. But we can feel ourselves merging, Rhea whispered, fear making her voice small. Every day, we lose a little more separation. Soon we won't know where I end and Kala begins. Then you need boundaries, I said firmly. Not walls, but healthy lines that say, this is me, this is you, this is us. Watch. I demonstrated with Kieran, showing how our bond had clear channels, places where we were one consciousness, and places where we remained distinctly individual. How we could merge completely when necessary, but also separate to maintain our sense of self. It's like breathing, Kieran explained. Together, apart. Together, apart. A rhythm you establish and maintain through conscious choice. For the next hour, I watched the 3 pairs stumble through honest communication. It was painful, awkward, and beautiful. Saren cried as she confessed her fear of becoming like the harvester. Her wolf, Fenrir, she'd named him, whined as he admitted he'd been fighting the bond because he didn't want to lose his pack connections. Jasper revealed that his raven, Nyx, had bonded with him during a moment of suicidal despair, and he wasn't sure if their connection was real or just Nyx preventing his death. The raven cawed indignantly, and through the bond language, told him that saving his life and choosing him as partner weren't mutually exclusive. Rhea and Kala's confession was simplest but most profound. They were in love before the bond manifested, and now they couldn't tell if their feelings were real or power-induced. Then separate, I suggested. Completely. Close the bond for 1 full day and see how you feel. Can we do that? Kala asked, shocked. You can do anything, Kieran said. The bond responds to will. If you want separation to test your feelings, it will allow it. But he held up a warning hand. Don't wait too long. Prolonged separation while the bond is new can cause permanent damage. As the sun set in this pocket dimension, a phenomenon I'd programmed purely for aesthetic comfort, I felt the tear near the northern glaciers pulse urgently. Kieran, I said quietly, and he felt it too. We have to go, he announced to the group. A new tear is forming, and we're the only ones who can stabilize it. But we'll be back in. He glanced at me. 3 days mortal time, I calculated, doing the complex dimensional math. Continue the exercises. Be honest with each other. And if anything goes wrong, call for the primal. He'll hear you. Wait, Saren called as we prepared to shift dimensions. Will we ever be able to do what you do? Exist across realms? I paused, considering the question carefully. Maybe. But not the way we did it. The Phoenix, right, was a desperate gamble that could have killed us. You'll find your own path, your own evolution. And it might be something even we can't imagine. That's terrifying, Jasper muttered. That's exciting, Kala countered, her eyes bright with possibility. I smiled. Both are true. That's the nature of awakening. With a thought, Kieran and I shifted, our forms becoming translucent, our consciousness expanding across dimensions. The meadow faded, replaced by the cold beauty of the northern glaciers where reality was tearing itself apart. As we worked to stabilize the new breach, weaving reality back together with practiced ease, I felt Kieran's presence beside me, through me, part of me. Do you regret it? He asked through our bond. What we became. I considered the question honestly. We'd given up so much. Simple mortality, peaceful ignorance, the comfort of truly belonging to one world. We would never age, never truly rest, never be fully human again. But we'd also gained everything that mattered. Never, I answered. Not for a single moment. His love flooded through our bond, warm and eternal and absolutely real. Together, we mended reality. Together, we would teach the next generation. Together, we would guard the boundaries for as long as existence required guardians. We had become unthinkable, and now we would teach others to do the same in their own way, on their own terms, with their own choices. The age of forced bonds and corrupted power was over. The age of chosen partnership had begun. Chapter 8. Trial by Fire. The distress call ripped through dimensions like a scream. Kieran and I were stabilizing a minor tear near the eastern marshlands when Saren's voice tore through our consciousness, raw terror amplified by her untrained bond with Fenrir. Help! Please, we need. It's happening again. I can't control. The connection cut off abruptly, leaving only echoes of panic and the metallic taste of blood across dimensional barriers. Go, Kieran said before I could speak, already shifting forms. I'll finish here. Together, I insisted, pulling reality closed with a final weave of power. The tear sealed with a sound like breaking glass in reverse. We don't separate during emergencies. Not after what happened to Seraphine. He nodded, understanding immediately. The last speaker had died alone, separated from her guardian during a crisis. We'd sworn never to repeat that mistake. Together, we shifted, consciousness expanding, bodies becoming translucent as we moved through the spaces between worlds. The pocket dimension training ground materialized around us in fragments, scattered flowers, books burning with uncontrolled power, and at the center, chaos. Saren floated 3 feet off the ground, violet energy crackling around her in violent arcs. Her eyes had gone completely white, no iris, no pupil, just blazing power that leaked from every pore. Fenrir circled beneath her in his wolf form, howling desperately, trying to call her back. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the thing emerging from the tear her uncontrolled power had ripped in the pocket dimension's fabric. A void creature, similar to the walker we destroyed months ago, but smaller, younger.
Hungry.
And it was reaching for Jasper. The raven-bonded man stood frozen, his shadow wings flickering uselessly as void tendrils wrapped around his ankles. Nyx dive-bombed the creature, cawing frantically, but her talons passed through its incorporeal form. Rhea and Kala huddled together, their merged aura pulled tight in defense, but I could see the strain. They'd been practicing separation like I'd suggested, and now their bond was too weak to manifest protective power. Kieran, the void creature, I said, already moving toward Saren. I'll handle her. He transformed mid-leap into his full hybrid form, the perfect balance of human intelligence and wolf ferocity. His claws found purchase on the void creature where Nyx's couldn't, and he tore into it with savage precision. I rose to meet Saren in the air, my own power flaring violet and silver. Saren, can you hear me? No response. She was lost in the power, drowning in the bond's intensity. Through my dimensional sight, I could see what had happened. She and Fenrir had tried to merge their essences like Kieran and I did, but without the foundation of trust we'd spent months building. The attempt had backfired catastrophically. Her consciousness was scattering across dimensions, pieces of her existing in multiple realities simultaneously. If I didn't pull her back now, she'd dissolve completely. Fenrir. I called the wolf. I need you to trust me. Let me into your bond. The silver wolf's amber eyes found mine, wild with fear. But he'd seen what Kieran and I could do. After a heartbeat's hesitation, he opened his side of the bond. I dove in. The connection was chaos, raw, untrained, powerful enough to reshape reality, but with no control. Like holding lightning barehanded. Saren's consciousness fractured into 1,000 pieces, each one showing me a different version of her. A child watching her village burn, shadow creatures pouring from a tear no one else could see. A teenager discovering her abilities, accidentally killing her first love when the power manifested. A young woman running, always running, until Fenrir found her. A speaker terrified of becoming the monster everyone said she would be. "I see you," I whispered, my voice carrying across all her fragmented pieces. "Every version of you, every fear, every hope. And you are not a monster, Saren. You're just scared." "I killed him," her fractured voice sobbed across dimensions. "Marcus. We were bonded, not like this, just young and in love, and when my power manifested, it burned him to ash. I killed the first person I ever bonded with." The revelation hit me like ice water. She'd been bonded before Fenrir. The trauma had scarred her so deeply that her soul still carried the wound. "Then let's heal it," I said firmly. "Fenrir, I need you to show her what she means to you. Every moment since you met. Hold nothing back." The wolf howled, and his memories flooded the bond. Finding a broken girl in the thorn veil, nearly dead from exposure and grief. Choosing to stay when every instinct said to return to his pack. Watching her slowly heal, slowly smile again. The moment their souls recognized each other, not as replacement for what she'd lost, but as something new and precious. The terror of watching her power manifest, not for himself, but for her. Knowing she'd think she'd lose him too. "You won't lose me," Fenrir's voice came through clearly, the first time he'd spoken in human language since bonding. "I'm not Marcus. I'm not human fragile. I'm a wolf, Saren. I'm built to handle your fire." "But what if?" Her fractured pieces started to argue. "No what ifs," I interrupted firmly.
Here. Now.
This moment. Choose. Stay scattered and safe but alone forever, or come back together and risk being hurt again. Through the bond, I felt her wavering. The trauma ran so deep, the fear so visceral. So I showed her my own memories. My mother is dying to protect me. Years of hiding, terrified of my own abilities. The moment I met Kieran and felt the bond snap into place, beautiful and terrifying. Choosing to risk everything, knowing I might explode like the last speaker. The phoenix writes agony, nearly losing myself in the infinite possibilities. Coming back because love was stronger than fear. "You think you're alone in being scared?" I asked gently. "Saren, every speaker, who ever lived, was terrified. The difference between those who succeeded and those who burned out isn't lack of fear. It's choosing to trust anyway." Slowly, painfully, her fragments began pulling back together. I guided them, weaving her consciousness back into cohesive form while Fenrir anchored her with his unwavering devotion. When her eyes finally cleared, brown irises visible again. Tears streamed down her face. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I almost killed everyone. I almost." "You almost learned a valuable lesson the hard way," I corrected, lowering us both gently to the ground. "Never attempt soul fusion without first building absolute trust. The technique that saved Kieran and me could kill you if you're not ready." Fenrir transformed, his first shift to human form since bonding. He was young, maybe 20, with silver hair and those distinctive amber eyes. Without hesitation, he pulled Saren into his arms. "I'm not going anywhere," he promised. "Not ever. You're stuck with me." She laughed through her tears, and I felt their bond stabilize, not merged, but connected. Healthy. Chosen. A roar pulled my attention back to Kieran. The void creature was bigger now, feeding on the dimensional instability Saren had created. Kieran's hybrid form was bleeding from multiple wounds where void tendrils had torn through fur and flesh. "Jasper," I shouted. "Stop trying to fight it alone. Merge with Nyx properly." "I don't know how," he called back, still frozen as more tendrils wrapped around him. "You do," I insisted. "You've been fighting the bond since it formed because you thought it made you weak. But Nyx didn't bond with you to prevent your death. She bonded with you because she saw strength worth preserving." The raven landed on Jasper's shoulder, and through my expanded awareness, I saw their bond clearly now. It wasn't just protective, it was admiring. Nyx had witnessed Jasper's kindness in his darkest moment, choosing to save others even when he wanted to die himself. "Let her in," I urged. "All the way." Jasper closed his eyes and finally stopped fighting. His shadow wings solidified, growing from translucent wisps to solid midnight feathers. Power flooded through him as he and Nyx merged their essences properly for the first time. He rose into the air, his form shifting, not fully like Kieran's hybrid transformation, but something uniquely his own. Half human, half raven, wrapped in shadows that felt more like protection than threat. Together, he and Kieran attacked the void creature from both sides. Kieran's claws tore through from below while Jasper's shadow wings cut from above. The creature shrieked, unable to defend against coordinated assault from two fully bonded pairs. With a final, desperate lunge, Kieran's jaws closed around the creature's core, that essential point where it anchored to reality. He pulled, and the void creature dissolved with a scream that echoed across dimensions. Silence fell like snow. "Is everyone all right?" I asked, scanning the group. Rhea and Kala emerged from their defensive huddle, shaken but unharmed. Jasper landed gracefully, Nyx separating from his form to perch on his shoulder again, though now their connection felt solid, unbreakable. Saren clung to Fenrir, both of them exhausted but alive. Kieran shifted back to his preferred mostly human form, blood still seeping from the wounds on his chest and arms. Without thinking, I moved to him, my healing abilities, the ones I'd possessed even before awakening, flowing through our bond to knit his flesh. "Well," he said with a pained grin. "That was exciting. That was catastrophic." Morwen's sharp voice cut through the pocket dimension. She materialized with Thane beside her, both looking furious and terrified in equal measure. We felt the dimensional breach from the palace. "What happened?" Before I could explain, Saren stepped forward. "It was my fault. I tried to do what Tessa and Kieran did, merge souls, without understanding the risks. I almost killed everyone." "But she didn't," Fenrir added firmly, his hand finding hers. She pulled back. "Learned. We're stronger now." Thane's ice-blue eyes surveyed the damage, burned flowers, reality still flickering in places where the tear had formed, blood on the ground. "You're all fortunate to be alive. Fortunate to have good teachers," Jasper countered, and I heard newfound confidence in his voice. The crisis had forced him to finally accept his bond, and it showed. "Good teachers don't let their students nearly die," I said quietly, shame heating my face. "I should have been here. Should have anticipated." "You can't anticipate every crisis," Kieran interrupted, his hand on my shoulder. "That's the lesson here. For us and for them." He addressed the group, his voice carrying alpha authority despite his wounds. "You will face situations where we're not there to save you, where you have to make split-second decisions that could kill you. That's the reality of being awakened." "So, what do we do?" Kala asked, her hand gripping Rhea's tightly. "You learn from mistakes without letting them paralyze you," I said. "Saren, you learned that soul fusion requires groundwork. Jasper, you learned that accepting the bond makes you stronger, not weaker. Rhea, Kala, you learned that trying to separate too much leaves you vulnerable." "And what did you learn?" Saren asked me directly. The question caught me off guard, but she deserved honesty. "That teaching is harder than I thought," I admitted. "That giving others freedom to make mistakes means watching them nearly die. That I can't protect everyone, no matter how powerful I've become." Thane's expression softened slightly. "Welcome to leadership. It never gets easier. But it does get more rewarding," Morwen added, studying the three pairs with her violet eyes. "Look at them. They're still standing, still bonded, still choosing to continue despite the fear." She was right. Despite everything, none of them showed signs of wanting to quit. If anything, they looked more determined. "All right," I said, drawing myself up. "New rule. No attempting advanced techniques without supervision. And we're extending the training. 3 more weeks minimum." "I thought you said we had to find our own paths." Rhea challenged. "You do," Kieran confirmed. But you need a foundation first. Skills that keep you alive long enough to discover what those paths are. A shimmer in the air announced the primal's arrival. The ancient being manifested in his most solid form, eyes blazing with colors that made everyone except Kieran and me look away. I felt the breach, he rumbled. And the resolution. Well done, young ones. His gaze fixed on Saren specifically. You faced your trauma and survived. That takes more strength than most possess. Saren bowed her head respectfully. Thank you, Ancient One. Don't thank me yet, the primal said, and something in his tone made my skin prickle. What you felt today was a minor void creature. A juvenile. They're gathering, drawn by the awakening of multiple speaker bloodlines.
Coordinating.
Planning. Planning what? Thane demanded. The primal smile was grim. An assault. On all awakened pairs simultaneously. They learned from the harvester's failure. Don't attack the strongest first. Attack the weakest, drain them. Use that power to take down the next strongest, and so on until even the dimensional guardians fall. Ice flooded my veins. When?
Soon.
Weeks, maybe days. He turned to the three pairs. Which means your training just became much more urgent. And much more dangerous. Then we'd better get started, Jasper said, his shadow wings manifesting unconsciously. Nyx cawed agreement. I looked at Kieran, feeling his thoughts through our bond. This was it, the real test. Not just of the new speakers, but of our ability to prepare them for what was coming. All right, I said, my voice carrying across dimensions. No more gentle exercises. Starting now, we train for war. Chapter 9. Forged in Shadow. 3 weeks of relentless training had transformed the pocket dimension into a war ground. The eternal Twilight Meadow was scarred now, craters where power had erupted unchecked, scorched earth where fire and shadow had clashed, crystalline structures I'd erected for combat exercises. The peaceful sanctuary had become something harder, sharper, necessary, just like the speakers themselves. I watched from a raised platform as Saren and Fenrir sparred against Jasper and Nyx in the center arena. No longer the terrified, unstable pair from 3 weeks ago, they moved with coordinated precision. Saren channeled her power through Fenrir's physical form, creating a wolf wreathed in violet flame. Jasper countered with shadow constructs, while Nyx dive-bombed from above, her talons now capable of manifesting as pure darkness. Better. Kieran called from beside me, his arms crossed as he observed. But Jasper, you're still hesitating before each strike. In real combat, that hesitation will kill you. I don't want to actually hurt them, Jasper protested, his shadow wings flickering with frustration. Then you've already lost, Thane said coldly from where he stood at the arena's edge. He'd been helping with training, teaching the tactical applications of shadow magic he'd learned, and showing them firsthand what a master could do. Saren won't hesitate to burn you if it means surviving, he continued. The void creatures certainly won't. You need to commit fully to each attack, or don't attack at all. Jasper's jaw clenched, but on his next strike, the shadow blade he manifested was solid, fast, deadly. Saren barely blocked it with a shield of fire, the collision sending shockwaves across the arena. Good, I called.
Again.
Faster this time. While they continued, I shifted my attention to Rhea and Kala on the adjacent training ground. They were practicing the delicate balance I'd taught them, merging and separating their bonds in controlled cycles. Together, their combined aura formed a perfect sphere that could deflect almost any attack. Separated, they were individually weaker, but more mobile, harder to target. The key is knowing when to use which state, I told them repeatedly. Merged for defense, separated for offense. Never stay in one state too long, or you'll become predictable. Morwen circled them like a predator, firing magical projectiles without warning. The pair had learned to read each other's intentions, merging split seconds before impacts and separating immediately after to reposition. Excellent, Morwen praised, though her expression remained stern. But remember, in real combat, you won't have time to think. The transition must be instinctive. A disturbance at the pocket dimension's entrance pulled my attention. Valen materialized through the gateway, his expression grave. "We have a problem," he announced without preamble. Kieran and I exchanged glances, then descended from the platform. The training pairs paused, sensing the shift in atmosphere. "What kind of problem?" I asked. "The kind where everything we've prepared for arrives early." Valen gestured, and a projection materialized in the air, a scrying image showing multiple locations simultaneously. The northern glaciers, void creatures massing in numbers I'd never seen, hundreds strong. The eastern marshlands, reality tears opening like wounds, bleeding shadow spawn into the mortal realm. The southern deserts, plague ravens circling in clouds so thick they blotted out the sun. And the Thornvale, ancient trees thrashing, fighting against corruption seeping through their roots. "It's happening now," Valen said. "Coordinated assault on all fronts. They're not waiting for us to be ready." "How long do we have?" Thane demanded, ice already forming on his fingertips. "Hours. Maybe less." Valen's void-dark eyes found mine. "They're targeting the weakest points first, villages near reality, tiers, isolated guardians. By the time we respond to one attack, 3 more will have begun. Then we split up," I said immediately. "Kieran and I take the glaciers. That's where the main force is gathering. Thane, you handle the marshlands with your soldiers. Valen, the southern deserts. Morwen, I'll coordinate from Stormwatch," she interrupted. "Someone needs to maintain communication across all fronts and redirect forces as needed." "What about us?" Saren asked, stepping forward with Fenrir at her side. The other pairs moved to join her, forming a united front. "You stay here," Kieran said firmly. "This is beyond your current abilities." "With respect, Lord Kieran," Jasper said, the honorific deliberate, acknowledging Kieran's authority while preparing to argue. "We've been training for exactly this scenario. You said it yourself. We need real combat experience." "Not against these numbers," I said, studying the scrying projection. The void creatures were organized, forming ranks, following commands from something larger we couldn't see yet. "This isn't a learning opportunity. This is survival." "Which is why you need us," Rhea spoke up, her voice steady. "You and Kieran are powerful, but you can't be everywhere at once. Even as dimensional guardians, you're still bound by the laws of reality. You need support." She wasn't wrong. The Primal had warned us that our transformation made us powerful, but not omnipotent. We could exist across multiple dimensions, but we couldn't fully manifest in more than 3 locations simultaneously without risking dissolution. "They come with me," Valen said suddenly. Everyone turned to stare at him. "Absolutely not," Thane snapped. "I don't trust you with untrained speakers." "Which is why it's perfect," Valen countered. "You don't trust me, so you'll keep a close watch. They need a real battlefield commander who understands void tactics. I studied them for years preparing to fight the Harvester. And frankly, brother, your ice magic is better suited to the marshland's humidity than desert heat." He had a point, though I hated admitting it. "The southern desert assault is also the smallest," Valen continued. "Fewer void creatures, more plague ravens. Good for a first real combat experience without being immediately fatal." "Immediately fatal," Kala repeated flatly. "How reassuring." "I make no promises," Valen said with brutal honesty. "You might die. Probably will, honestly, given your inexperience. But you'll die eventually anyway, either in this battle or the next. At least this way, you choose to fight for something." "Inspiring speech," Jasper muttered, but his shadow wings manifested unconsciously. "Ready." I looked at Kieran, having an entire conversation through our bond in seconds. "They're not ready. They'll never be fully ready. We weren't. We had no choice. Neither do they. Not really. This is their world too. If they die, then they die fighting instead of hiding. Would you have chosen differently?"
No.
"I wouldn't have." "All right," I said aloud, hating every word. "Saren, Jasper, Rhea, Kala, you go with Valen. Follow his commands exactly. If he says retreat, you retreat. If he says hide, you hide. Understood. Understood, they chorused, determination etched on every face. One more thing, Kieran added, his voice dropping to that alpha tone that demanded absolute obedience. Stay alive. Whatever it takes, survive. Because if you die, we will be very disappointed. Despite the tension, Saren smiled slightly. Can't have disappointed teachers. Damn right, I said, then pulled each of them aside for final instructions. To Saren, your power is strongest when you stop being afraid of it. The fire won't consume Fenrir, trust that. To Jasper, commitment isn't cruelty. Hesitation kills. Strike fast, strike true. To Rhea and Kala, your bond is unique. Use that. The enemy has never faced human-to-human fusion before. Surprise is your greatest weapon. As the pairs gathered their gear, weapons I'd forged from compressed reality, armor Morwen had enchanted, the primal materialized beside me. You're sending children to war, he observed, not quite accusatory but close. I'm sending speakers to defend their world. I corrected. There's a difference. Is there? His kaleidoscope eyes studied me. Or are you just justifying sending them to potential death because you need the tactical support? The question cut deeper than any void creature's claws. Was I making a strategic decision or rationalizing endangering people under my protection? Both, I admitted quietly. I need them and they need this. Neither truth negates the other. Honest, at least. The primal's form flickered. I'll watch over them when I can. But even I cannot be everywhere. None of us can, Kieran said, joining us. That's why we have to trust they can handle themselves. Within minutes, everyone had departed to their assigned positions. The pocket dimension felt empty, echoing with absence. Kieran and I stood alone in the scarred meadow. Ready? He asked, offering his hand. I took it, our bond flaring with combined power. Together. We shifted, consciousness expanding, bodies becoming translucent light. The northern glaciers materialized around us in fragments, ice and wind and void creatures that screamed in frequencies that could shatter minds. The battle had already begun. The void creatures were more organized than any I'd faced before. They moved in formation, vanguard, flanks, rear guard. Someone or something was commanding them with tactical precision. As Kieran and I manifested fully on the glacier's edge, I saw it. A void lord. Massive, ancient, wrapped in stolen realities like a cloak. Where the creatures we'd fought before were hunger-given form, this thing was intelligence. Strategy. It stood at the center of the void army, directing lesser creatures with gestures that bent space. There, I said, pointing. I see it. Kieran's hybrid form emerged, larger than usual. He was drawing on our full bond strength. That's what we need to kill. Easier said than done. The Void Lord was surrounded by concentric circles of protection, hundreds of lesser creatures forming living shields. Then we make a path. Kieran's wolf grin was feral. Together? Always. We attacked as one. I spoke words in the old tongue, reality bending to my will. The glacier beneath the void army rose, forming spikes of ice that impaled dozens of creatures. Kieran leaped impossibly high, his claws wreathed in silver fire that burned through void flesh like paper. The Void Lord turned its attention to us, and I felt the weight of its focus. Ancient, hungry, intelligent in ways that made my skin crawl. It spoke, and the words bypassed my ears to resonate directly in my mind.
Ah.
The Dimensional Guardians. The Harvester's Slayers. We wondered when you would appear. Wondered. I called back, violet energy crackling around me. You've been planning this assault specifically to draw us out. Not just to draw you out. The Void Lord's laugh was wrong. Too many voices layered over each other. To distract you while we take what we really want. Ice flooded my veins. What do you? Reality lurched. Through our dimensional awareness, I felt it. A massive void breach opening not at any of the locations we were defending, but at Stormwatch Palace itself. Where Morwen was coordinating alone. Where the palace's reality anchors were weakest. where the archives containing every piece of knowledge about speakers were stored. It's a trap, Kieran snarled. This whole assault is misdirection. Your student learns quickly, the Void Lord mused. By the time you return to your precious palace, we will have taken everything we need. The knowledge of how speakers are made, how bonds are formed, how to create our own. The implication hit me like a physical blow. They weren't trying to kill speakers. They were trying to become them. Or worse, create void-bonded versions that would spread corruption instead of maintaining balance. We need to go back, I said urgently. The army. Kieran gestured to the hundreds of void creatures still advancing. Is a distraction. He said it himself. I grabbed his hand. Morwen is alone. We have to. Another lurch in reality. This time from the south. Through our bond, I felt it clearly. Valen's presence winking out like a snuffed candle. And with it, the 3 training pairs' essences flickering, unstable, terrified. No, I whispered. Oh yes, the Void Lord purred. Did you really think we'd strike only one location when you split your forces so conveniently? Your Eastern King fights Void Spawn in the marshlands. Your brother King coordinates alone in the palace. And your precious students. A scrying projection materialized in the air, showing the southern desert. Valen lay motionless in the sand, shadow spawn wrapped around him like a cocoon. And surrounding the 3 pairs of young speakers were void creatures specifically bred for one purpose. Draining speaker essence. Saren screamed as tendrils latched onto her, violet energy visibly flowing from her body into the creatures. Fenrir tried to fight them off but couldn't touch their incorporeal forms. Jasper and Nyx fought desperately, but shadow against void was like trying to fight darkness with darkness, useless. Rhea and Kala had merged into their defensive sphere, but I could see cracks forming. They couldn't hold on forever. Choose, the Void Lord said, and I heard satisfaction in that multi-layered voice. Save your students, or save your archives. Save the present or the future. You cannot do both. You're powerful, guardians, but even you cannot manifest in 3 critical locations simultaneously without dissolving. Kieran's hand tightened on mine. Through our bond, I felt his anguish matching my own. We'd failed them, trained them, prepared them, and sent them straight into a trap. What do we do?
His mental voice asked.
I looked at the void army before us, at the projection showing our students dying, at the distant palace where Morwen fought alone, and I made a choice that would haunt me forever. We trust them, I said aloud. What? Kieran and the Void Lord spoke simultaneously. Thane can handle the marshlands. He's fought there for years. Morwen is the most powerful mage in the north. She can hold the archives long enough. I met Kieran's eyes. But the students are ours. Our responsibility. And maybe. I looked at the projection, seeing Saren's flames finally igniting properly, burning with white-hot fury instead of fearful flickers. Maybe they're stronger than we think. You would abandon strategic positions for sentimentality? The Void Lord sounded genuinely confused. I would choose my students over tactics every single time, I said firmly. Because that's what teachers do. Then let's go teach them how to survive, Kieran growled. Together, we pulled. Not trying to manifest fully in multiple locations, that would dissolve us. Instead, we split our consciousness, majority to the south with the students, fragments maintaining defensive barriers here at the glaciers and at Stormwatch. It was agony, like being torn apart and held together simultaneously. But through the pain, I felt Kieran's presence anchoring me, and I anchored him in return. The southern desert materialized around us, not fully solid, but enough. Enough to be there when Saren needed us most. Hold on, I shouted as we crashed into the battlefield like falling stars. We're here. Chapter 10, Blood and Awakening. We hit the desert sand like falling meteors. The impact sent shockwaves rippling outward, scattering the void creatures, draining Saren. She collapsed to her knees, gasping, her violet energy flickering weakly. Fenrir immediately shifted to human form, catching her before she hit the ground. Tessa, Kieran, Jasper's voice was raw with relief and terror. He and Nyx fought back to back, shadow wings slashing at creatures that multiplied faster than they could kill them. Rhea and Kalla's defensive sphere had cracked completely. They knelt in the sand, barely conscious, their merged aura pulsing erratically. And Valen, gods, Valen was completely encased in a cocoon of living shadow, his face barely visible through the dark tendrils. His eyes were open but unseeing, lost in whatever nightmare the shadow spawn had trapped him in. Status report. Kieran barked, his hybrid form manifesting fully now that we'd committed our consciousness to this location. The fragment we'd left at the glaciers would hold, but barely. They came out of nowhere. Jasper panted, Nyx cawing agreement from his shoulder. One moment we were handling the plague ravens, the next, he gestured at the carnage. These things appeared. Valen tried to counter with shadow magic, but they turned it against him, used his own power to trap him. How long ago? I demanded, already moving toward Saren. Her essence was dangerously depleted. 5 minutes?
10?
Time feels wrong here. Jasper's shadow wings flickered, unstable. He was running on fumes. I knelt beside Saren, placing my hands on her temples. Through our contact, I felt the damage. Void creatures had latched onto her bond with Fenrir, using it as a conduit to drain them both. The bond itself was fraying, seconds from snapping completely. Fenrir, I need you to hold her steady, I instructed. This is going to hurt. Do it, he said without hesitation. Trust absolutely. I dove into their bond, finding the void contamination immediately. It looked like black rot eating through silver and violet threads, corruption spreading with each heartbeat. If I didn't remove it now, they'd both be lost. But extraction meant pain, meant tearing out pieces of their essence along with the contamination. I'm sorry, I thought, then pulled. Saren's scream could have shattered glass. Fenrir howled, his form flickering between human and wolf as agony crashed through their bond. But I didn't stop, couldn't stop. Every second of hesitation meant more corruption spreading. The void contamination came out in stringy tendrils, smoking and writhing. I incinerated it with violet fire the moment it cleared their bond, refusing to let it escape to infect anyone else. When I finally released them, they collapsed together, breathing hard but clean. The bond glowed weakly but steady, damaged but intact. Rest, I ordered. You're out of this fight. Like hell, Saren started, but I cut her off with a look. That's not a request. You push yourself now. The bond will snap, and you'll both die. Trust me to handle this. Reluctantly, she nodded, too exhausted to argue further. A roar pulled my attention back to the main battle. Kieran fought against a tide of void creatures, his silver fire burning through dozens at a time. But for every one he killed, 2 more materialized. They were spawning from the desert itself, reality so thin here that the void could push through without needing tears. We'd walked into a killing ground perfectly designed to overwhelm even us. At the palace, Kieran's voice came through our bond. I'm feeling our fragment weakening. Morwen needs us.
The students need us more right now.
They're going to die if we don't finish this fast. He was right. We couldn't maintain partial manifestation indefinitely, and the void creatures kept coming. We needed to cut off the source. Jasper, I called. Can you see where they're spawning from? Your shadow sight should be able to track their origin point. He closed his eyes, Nyx's presence merging with his consciousness. When he opened them again, they were solid black, pure raven sight enhanced by speaker magic. There, he pointed toward a cluster of rocks half a mile north. Reality is thinnest there. It's like an open wound bleeding void. Can you close it? I asked. I don't, maybe. If I had help. He looked at Rhea and Kalla, who were struggling to stand. We can help, Kalla said, though her voice shook. We've been practicing sealing minor tears. This isn't minor, I warned. Then it's time we learned, Rhea said firmly, gripping Kalla's hand. I wanted to refuse. Wanted to order them to stay back where it was safe, or safer, at least. But we were out of time and options.
All right.
Kieran and I will clear a path. The three of you focus on sealing that breach. Nothing else matters. Not fighting, not defending, just seal it. Understood. They nodded, determination overriding fear. What about Valen? Fenrir asked from where he held Saren. I looked at the cocoon of shadow spawn. We'll need to. The cocoon exploded. Valen emerged not as the Eastern King we knew, but something else entirely. His eyes burned void black, shadow pouring from his skin like smoke. The shadow spawn hadn't trapped him. They'd been trying to merge with him. And they'd succeeded. Oh gods, Jasper breathed. Is he corrupted? I finished, ice flooding my veins. They turned him into a void speaker. Valen, or what he'd become, turned those empty eyes toward us. When he spoke, his voice carried the same multi-layered quality as the Void Lord's. Thank you for coming, Guardians. We needed a speaker to study, to understand, and the Eastern King's knowledge of shadow magic made him the perfect vessel. Fight it, Valen, I shouted. You're stronger than this.
He was.
Past tense. The thing wearing Valen's face smiled. Now he's ours. And soon all speakers will be. It raised Valen's hand, and void energy exploded outward. Not wild like the creature's attacks, but controlled. Precise. Using Valen's decades of combat experience combined with void power. Kieran barely managed to pull me aside as a bolt of concentrated void passed through where I'd been standing, leaving a hole in reality that took seconds to repair itself. We can't kill him, Kieran said urgently. If there's any chance Valen's still in there, then we have to exorcise the void contamination. I finished. Like I did with Saren, but 1,000 times worse. You won't have the chance, Void Valen said, and suddenly we were surrounded. The void creatures that had been spawning endlessly coalesced into a single massive form, a construct that dwarfed even the Void Lord at the glaciers. It had too many limbs, too many mouths, all screaming in frequencies that made blood leak from my ears. Go! I screamed at Jasper, Rhea, and Kala. Seal the breach now. They ran, Nyx providing aerial cover as void creatures tried to intercept. Jasper's shadow magic was running on pure instinct now, creating barriers that bought them precious seconds. Kieran and I turned to face the construct and Void Valen together. Plan, he asked.
Don't die.
Save Valen. Survive long enough for the breach to close. Terrible plan. You have better? His wolf grin was fierce and wild. Not even a little. We attacked as one, silver and violet light crashing against void darkness. The construct's limbs lashed out faster than thought, each one capable of tearing through dimensional barriers. Kieran took 3 hits protecting me, his hybrid form bleeding from wounds that wouldn't heal properly in this void-saturated air. I retaliated by speaking reality itself into new shapes, the desert sand becoming crystalline spears that impaled the construct's limbs, holding them long enough for Kieran to tear them off. But Void Valen was the real threat. He wielded shadow magic with precision we couldn't match, every spell calculated to exploit weaknesses in our fighting style. Because he'd watched us train for weeks, learn our patterns, studied our bond. A shadow blade manifested from nowhere, driving toward my heart. I twisted, but not fast enough. It caught my shoulder, and void contamination flooded the wound. Pain like nothing I'd ever felt. The void was eating me from the inside out, consuming my essence one cell at a time. Tessa. Kieran's roar shook the desert. Through our bond, he felt every bit of my agony. Don't, I sent it urgently. Don't lose focus. Too late. His rage exploded outward in a shockwave of pure alpha power. The construct shattered under the assault, reduced to scattered void particles. But Void Valen used the distraction. Shadow chains erupted from the sand, wrapping around Kieran's limbs, pulling him down. More chains wrapped around me, binding us both. Perfect, Void Valen purred, approaching slowly. 2-dimensional guardians, helpless. When we consume your essences, we'll have everything we need to create an army of void speakers. Through the pain and fear, I felt Jasper, Rhea, and Kala reaching the breach point. Felt them beginning the sealing ritual, their three bonds weaving together in a desperate attempt to close the wound in reality. They were so close. I just needed a few more minutes. Minutes we didn't have. Void Valen raised his hand, void energy coalescing into a blade designed specifically to harvest speaker essence. The harvester's technique, perfected. We learned so much from his memories before we consumed him. Now, let's see what we can learn from. An explosion of white fire interrupted him. Saren stood 20 yards away, Fenrir beside her in full wolf form. She shouldn't have been conscious, let alone fighting. But her eyes blazed with power that made my awakening look gentle. Nobody, she snarled, flames wreathing her entire body, touching my teachers. The fire that erupted from her wasn't violet like mine. It was white, pure speaker essence unbounded by fear or restraint. The trauma I'd helped her process, the bond with Fenrir she'd finally accepted completely, it had all crystallized into something unprecedented. Raw, unfiltered power. She'd awakened fully. Not just accepting her abilities, but embracing them completely. Becoming what every speaker was meant to be, a force of nature given human form. The white flames crashed over Void Valen like a tsunami. For the first time, the multi-layered voice screamed, actual fear rather than tactical manipulation. Impossible. She was depleted. I was holding back, Saren corrected, walking forward with flames dancing between her fingers. Afraid of becoming the monster who killed Marcus. But you know what? I'm not afraid anymore. She pressed her burning hand against Void Valen's chest. And you're going to leave my cousin's body. Now. The revelation that Valen was her cousin barely registered through the chaos. Saren was pulling the void contamination out of him, the same technique I'd used on her bond, but magnified 100-fold. Valen screamed, his own voice this time, human and anguished, as the void was forcibly extracted. It came out in a torrent of black smoke, thrashing and fighting. Saren incinerated it with white fire. When she finally released him, Valen collapsed to the sand, gasping and free. The shadow chains binding Kieran and me dissolved without the void's power sustaining them. We scrambled to our feet just as Jasper's voice echoed across the desert. It's sealed. The breach is closed. The remaining void creatures shrieked as their spawning point cut off. Without reinforcements, Kieran and I made quick work of the stragglers, our combined power overwhelming now that we weren't facing infinite numbers. Within minutes, the desert was silent except for ragged breathing. Saren swayed, her white flames guttering out. Fenrir caught her again, and this time she laughed weakly. I really need to stop passing out. You were magnificent, I said honestly, moving to check her condition. Exhausted, yes. Essence depleted, absolutely. But not damaged. She'd managed the full awakening without destroying herself. I had good teachers, she said. Then her eyes found Valen. Is he? Valen stirred, groaning. When he opened his eyes, they were his own again. Void dark but human. Conscious.
Free.
That, he rasped, was the worst experience of my very long life. Welcome back, Kieran said dryly. The palace. I suddenly remembered, our fragment there flickering weakly in my awareness. We need to. A familiar hull cut through dimensions. The primal's voice, carrying a message. Stand down. The palace is secure. Thane held the marshlands. The Void Lord at the glaciers retreated when its main forces failed. We've won. Relief flooded through me so intensely my knees buckled. Kieran caught me, and we held each other for a moment, just breathing. We'd survived. All of us. We did it, Jasper said, disbelief coloring his voice. Nyx cawed triumphantly on his shoulder. Rhea and Kala collapsed together in the sand, laughing with exhausted relief. Saren and Fenrir held each other, alive against all odds. And Valen. Valen sat up slowly, looking at his hands as if seeing them for the first time. I felt everything, he said quietly. Every thought the void had. Every plan. They're not done, Tessa. This was just the first wave. They're learning from us, adapting. And they have patience measured in eons. Then we'll be ready, I said firmly. Because we have something they'll never understand. What's that? He asked. I looked at each of the pairs, battered, exhausted, but alive. Still choosing each other despite everything. We have love, I said simply. And that's a power the void can never truly corrupt. Chapter 11. What the void took. 3 days after the battle, Stormwatch Palace looked like a war memorial. The eastern wing lay in ruins where void creatures had breached the outer walls before Morwen drove them back. The courtyard, that same space where Kieran and I had first met, was scorched black from the white fire Saren had manifested during her return. And the northern glaciers bore scars that would take decades to heal, reality itself still flickering in places where the Void Lord's presence had weakened the dimensional fabric. But we'd survived. That was what mattered. Or so I'd thought until Morwen called the emergency council meeting. We need to discuss what we lost, she said without preamble, her violet eyes shadowed with exhaustion. The 3-day battle had aged her visibly, new lines around her eyes, her silver hair streaked with white that hadn't been there before. Thane sat at the head of the table, ice constantly forming and melting on his fingertips, a nervous habit he developed since the marshland's assault. Valen sat across from him, still recovering from his possession. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, and he flinched at every sudden shadow. Kieran and I occupied the center positions, our partially manifested forms flickering occasionally as we maintained awareness across multiple dimensions. We'd learned our lesson about being caught off guard. The 3 speaker pairs sat together at the far end, Saren and Fenrir, Jasper and Nyx, Rhea and Kala. They'd earned their place at this table through blood and fire. Lost, I prompted when Morwen's silence stretched too long. She placed a charred book on the table. I recognized it immediately, one of the primordial texts from the archives. The void must have damaged it during their assault on the palace. This is Codex Anima, Morwen said. The only complete record of speaker bloodlines going back 3,000 years. Names, locations, lineage connections, everything needed to track and identify dormant speakers before they awaken. Ice flooded my veins. They took it. They copied it. Morwen corrected, her voice heavy. The Void Lord that breached the palace wasn't trying to steal physical texts. It was consuming information directly, burning knowledge into its consciousness. By the time I drove it back, it had absorbed 17 volumes. Including the Codex, Thane finished grimly. Silence fell like a funeral shroud. They know where all the unawakened speakers are, Jasper said slowly, understanding dawning with horror. They can find them before we do. Worse than that, Valen spoke, his voice still rough from the void of possession. When they controlled me, I felt their intentions. They're not just hunting speakers, they want to create void bonds. Force dormant speakers to bond with void creatures instead of natural guardians. Creating an army of corrupted speakers, Kieran growled, his hybrid form manifesting more solidly as anger stirred his wolf. An army we wouldn't be able to fight without killing innocent people who never chose corruption, I added, the full horror of it sinking in. They've turned our greatest strength into a weapon against us. There's more, Morwen said, and somehow her expression grew even graver. She pulled out another damaged text, this one barely intact, pages crumbling to ash. They also got Liber Resonantia, the book detailing how soul bonds are formed. My heart stopped.
No. Yes.
They now understand the mechanism behind what you and Kieran achieved. And if they can replicate it. She didn't need to finish. They could create void-bonded pairs as powerful as dimensional guardians, Saren whispered, her white flames flickering unconsciously around her hands. Corrupted versions of Tessa and Kieran. We have to find the unawakened speakers first, Kala said firmly. Warn them, train them, get them to safety before the void can reach them. The Codex listed 372 dormant bloodlines worldwide, Morwen said. Even with our forces combined, we can't possibly reach them all in time. Then we prioritize, Thane said, shifting into tactical mode. Which bloodlines are strongest? Which are most vulnerable? Where are they concentrated? The strongest bloodline is in the Western Territories, Morwen said, consulting her notes. A family called Ashenbrand. Their speaker potential traces back to the first speaker herself. Pure, undiluted power. If they awaken, they'd be. She paused, searching for words. Beyond anything we've seen, I finished, feeling the weight of that knowledge. Stronger than me. Maybe stronger than Kieran and I combined. Which makes them the Void's primary target, Valen said. If they can corrupt an Ashenbrand speaker before awakening. He didn't need to finish. We all understood the apocalyptic implications. How many Ashenbrands are there?
Kieran asked.
2 siblings. Twins. Morwen pulled out a scrying image, a young man and woman, maybe 19 or 20, with distinctive silver-streaked auburn hair. Aurelia and Silas Ashenbrand. They live in a remote village called Thornhaven, completely unaware of their heritage. Their mother was a dormant speaker who died without ever awakening. She kept their bloodline secret to protect them. We need to get to them immediately, I said, already preparing to shift dimensions. Wait. The primal's voice echoed through the chamber as his form materialized from smoke. The ancient being looked diminished somehow, his usually solid form flickering at the edges. There's something you need to understand about the Ashenbrand bloodline before you approach them. His kaleidoscope eyes found mine, and I saw something there I'd never seen before. Fear. The first speaker didn't die peacefully, he continued. She was murdered by her own bonded guardian when the power drove them both mad. Their combined essence, corrupted, twisted, was sealed away. But seals can break, especially if the right bloodline awakens in the wrong way. You're saying the Ashenbrand twins could unleash the first speaker's corrupted power, Jasper said. I'm saying if they awaken improperly, or if they're corrupted by the void before forming proper bonds, they won't just become powerful enemies. The primal's form solidified fully, showing his true, ancient terror. They'll become the vessels for that sealed corruption. The first speaker will rise again, mad, corrupted, and powerful enough to unmake reality itself. The chamber fell silent. Why are we only learning this now? Thane demanded, ice spreading across the table from his fingertips. Because I hoped it would never matter, the primal admitted. The Ashenbrand line has been dormant for 7 generations. The odds of twins awakening simultaneously, the specific circumstance needed to break the seal, were astronomical. I thought we had more time. But the Void's assault changed something, Morwen realized. When they attacked simultaneously across multiple fronts, the dimensional barriers weakened everywhere, including whatever seal holds the first speaker's corruption. Exactly, the primal confirmed. I can feel it cracking. The twins are on the verge of spontaneous awakening. Something that usually takes years of gradual development is happening in days because reality itself is destabilized. We have perhaps a week before they awaken whether we're ready or not. Then we go now, Kieran said, standing. Tessa and I will bring them back here, train them properly. No, Valen interrupted, and everyone turned to stare. Think tactically. If you two leave to retrieve the twins, who guards the rest of the realm? The Void knows we're weakened from the first assault. They'll strike again the moment our strongest defenders are absent. He's right, I admitted, hating every word. We can't leave Stormwatch undefended. So we sent a retrieval team, Thane said. Fast, capable, and us, Saren spoke up, standing with Fenrir beside her. We go. You just survived your first real battle 3 days ago, I protested. You're not ready for a mission this critical. With respect, teacher, you're wrong, Saren interrupted, her white flames manifesting unconsciously. I fully awakened during that battle. I understand my power now in ways I didn't before. And the Ashenbrand twins will need someone who can help them through that same process. She's right, Jasper added, standing as well. Nyx caught agreement from his shoulder. They'll need guides who remember what it's like to be terrified and new. You and Kieran are too far beyond that now, dimensional guardians who exist across multiple realities. How do you teach someone to walk when you've forgotten what it's like to have feet? The observation stung because it was accurate. Kieran and I had evolved so far beyond normal speakers that we'd lost touch with the basics. We could wield reality-altering power, but could we really teach scared twins how to manage their first manifestation? If Saren and Jasper go, we go too, Rhea said, Calla nodding beside her. 3 pairs are better than 1. 3 inexperienced pairs walking into a situation that could trigger an apocalypse, Thane said flatly. 3 pairs who just survived the Void's coordinated assault, Calla countered. We're stronger than you think. Than we thought. I looked at Kieran, having an entire conversation through our bond in seconds. They're not ready for this. Were we ready for the Phoenix, right? That was different.
Was it?
We gambled everything on desperation and love. They're asking to do the same. If they fail, if we don't send them and the Ashenbrand twins awaken corrupted, we all fail anyway. He was right. We were out of good options and down to choosing between terrible ones. All right, I said aloud, my voice heavy with the weight of the decision. But you don't go alone. Valen, have you recovered enough to travel? The Eastern King nodded slowly. Barely, but yes. Why?
Because you've been void-possessed.
You understand corruption from the inside now. If the twins start to awaken improperly, you'll sense it before anyone else. And, Kieran added, his tactical mind clearly working, you're the only person here besides Tessa and me who has enough raw power to contain an Ashenbrand awakening if it goes wrong. Contain, not stop, Valen clarified. Containment is all we need. Long enough for us to arrive and fix it. Valen considered, then nodded. I'll go. But I'm bringing Eastern reinforcements, my best shadow mages and void hunters. If this goes as badly as we're all thinking, we'll need backup. Agreed, Thane said. I'm sending Northern Ice mages as well. The twins need to be surrounded by every possible protection. When do we leave? Saren asked. Morwen consulted the scrying mirror, checking the dimensional stability near Thornhaven. The next stable travel window opens at dawn. That gives you 6 hours to prepare. Use them. As the council meeting dissolved into tactical planning, supply lists, communication protocols, emergency extraction procedures, I pulled Saren aside. You understand what you're walking into, I said quietly. The Ashenbrand twins aren't just powerful dormant speakers. They're potential vessels for the first speaker's corrupted essence. If you can't guide their awakening properly, then reality ends, Saren finished calmly. I understand. But teacher, you taught me that power without fear is recklessness, and fear without courage is paralysis. I'm afraid. Terrified, honestly. But I'm also ready. Her white flames danced around her fingers, controlled, purposeful, beautiful. The scared girl from 3 weeks ago had become something else entirely. Not just a speaker, but a leader. Then go with my blessing, I said, pulling her into a brief embrace. And come back alive. All of you. We will, she promised. You trained us too well to fail now. As she walked away to continue preparations, Fenrir shifted to human form beside me. She's stronger than even she knows, he said quietly, his amber eyes following his bonded with unmistakable love and pride. Whatever happens in Thornhaven, we'll face it together. Together, I echoed, the word carrying weight it always did now. Kieran materialized beside me, his hand finding mine automatically. They're going to be fine. You don't know that. No, he admitted. But I have faith in what we taught them. Sometimes that's all we can have. Through the windows, I could see dawn approaching, the sky lightening from black to deep blue. In 6 hours, our students would leave on a mission that could save or doom everything. And Kieran and I would stay behind, trusting that we'd prepared them well enough. Trusting in the bonds they'd formed. Trusting in love is stronger than corruption. We should tell them about the contingency plan, Kieran said quietly. I closed my eyes, hating what we decided in private earlier. Not yet. They don't need that weight on top of everything else. The contingency plan. If the Ashenbrand twins awakened corrupted despite everyone's best efforts, Kieran and I would execute a dimensional collapse centered on Thornhaven. Erase the entire region from reality, twins, students, reinforcements, and all. Sacrifice hundreds to save billions. It was the right tactical choice. The only choice, really. And it would destroy us to make it. Dawn's coming, Kieran observed, watching the sky lighten. New day. New chance to save the world. Or new ways for it to end, I said. Always the optimist. His smile was gentle, understanding. Through our bond, he felt every bit of my fear. One of us has to be realistic. Then let me be the idealist for both of us. He turned me to face him, his wolf gold eyes catching the first rays of dawn. They're going to succeed, Tessa. Our students are going to bring the Ashenbrand twins home safely. The first speaker's corruption will remain sealed, and we'll all live to fight another day. You really believe that? I have to, he said simply. Because the alternative is living in fear, and we didn't survive the Phoenix, right, just to be afraid of what comes next. I leaned into him, drawing strength from his certainty even as doubt gnawed at me. Dawn broke fully, painting the sky in gold and rose. And in 6 hours, everything we'd built would be tested by the most dangerous mission yet. Chapter 12. The First and the Last. Finale. Dawn broke over Thornhaven like a warning. The village sat nestled in a valley between two mountain ranges, isolated enough that most maps didn't bother marking it. Ancient protection wards shimmered invisibly around its borders, remnants of magic placed by the first speaker herself 3,000 years ago to hide her descendants. Those wards were failing now, crumbling like everything else since the dimensional barriers had weakened. Saren felt at the moment their travel party crossed into the valley, a pressure against her awakened senses like static electricity before lightning strikes. Beside her, Fenrir's silver fur bristled, his wolf instincts screaming danger. Do you feel that? Jasper asked, his shadow wings manifesting unconsciously. Nyx cawed nervously on his shoulder, her black feathers ruffled. The seal, Valen said grimly from the front of their group. The Eastern King looked pale, dark circles still shadowing his eyes from the void possession. But his void-dark gaze was sharp, alert. It's breaking faster than the primal predicted. We have hours, not days. Then we find the twins quickly, Rhea said, gripping Kalla's hand. Their merged aura pulsed protectively around them both. The reinforcements Thane and Valen had brought fanned out as they entered Thornhaven proper. 40 ice mages, 30 shadow specialists, and a dozen void hunters who'd survived encounters with dimensional corruption. Enough to contain a catastrophe if one emerged. Not enough to stop one, Saren thought, but didn't say aloud. The village was eerily quiet. Morning smoke should have been rising from the chimneys. Market vendors should have been setting up stalls. Children should have been playing in the square. Instead, emptiness. Where is everyone? Kalla whispered. Fenrir's growl was her answer. He'd caught a scent, blood, fear, and something else. Something that tasted like the void, but wrong. Older, sicker. They found the villagers in the town hall, huddled together like sheep hiding from wolves. Men, women, children, nearly 200 people crammed into a space meant for half that number. They flinched when Saren's group entered, parents pulling children closer. Please, an elderly woman stepped forward, her voice shaking. We've barricaded ourselves here for 3 days. Ever since the twins. What happened to the twins? Valen asked, his tone carefully neutral despite the urgency Saren felt radiating from him. They're at the old temple ruins, the woman said, pointing north. 3 days ago, they went up there like they always did. It's their favorite place. But when they came back, she swallowed hard. Their eyes, they glow now. Silver and gold. And things happen around them. Impossible things. They're awakening, Saren said quietly. They're calling to something, the woman corrected. At night, we hear voices coming from the temple. Not the twins' voices, but something ancient answering them. We tried to approach yesterday, but the moment we got close, she gestured to a man with bandages covering half his face. Reality itself attacked us, tore at our skin, aged us years in seconds. The seal's corruption is leaking out, Valen muttered. It's using the twins' awakening as a doorway. Can you save them? The elderly woman asked, desperation naked in her voice. Aurelia and Silas. They're good children. They don't understand what's happening to them. Saren met the woman's eyes and made a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. We'll bring them home safely. The temple ruins sat atop the northern mountain like a broken crown. Ancient stone columns jutted toward the sky, covered in moss and 3,000 years of neglect. But as Saren's group climbed the steep path, she saw the ruins weren't as abandoned as they appeared. Fresh flowers lay at the base of each column, offerings placed recently. Candles burned despite the morning breeze. And at the temple's heart, in what had once been the sanctum, two figures sat in perfect stillness. Aurelia and Silas Ashenbrand. They were beautiful in an unsettling way, too perfect, too symmetrical, like reality had decided to create ideal human forms. Silver-streaked auburn hair fell to their shoulders. Their skin seemed to glow from within. And their eyes. Gods, their eyes. Aurelia's blazed molten silver. Silas's burned liquid gold. Both stared at nothing, lost in awakening visions only they could see. There in the space between, Saren recognized immediately, remembering her own disastrous attempt at soul fusion. Consciousness scattered across dimensions. If we don't anchor them soon, they'll dissolve completely, Jasper finished. Or worse, the first speaker's corruption will fill the empty spaces they leave behind. Spread out, Valen ordered the reinforcements. Defensive perimeter. Nothing gets in or out without my command. The specialists moved into position, forming concentric circles of protection around the temple. Ice mages raised barriers. Shadow mages wove darkness into defensive nets. Void hunters activated suppression fields. It wouldn't be enough if things went truly wrong, but it was all they had. Saren, Jasper, Rhea, Kala, Valen turned to the four young speakers. This is your show. I'm here to contain disasters, not prevent them. That's your job. No pressure, Jasper muttered, but his shadow wings solidified with determination. Saren approached the twins slowly, Fenrir at her side. Through her awakened senses, she could see the threads of their essence, silver and gold intertwining, but also fraying. Pieces of them existed in dozens of dimensions simultaneously, and more scattered with each passing second. Aurelia. Silas. She spoke clearly, projecting her voice across dimensions the way Tessa had taught her. Can you hear me? No response. Just those glowing eyes staring at infinity. We're going to help you, she continued, kneeling before them. But I need you to listen. What you're experiencing, the visions, the power, the feeling that you're everywhere and nowhere, it's called awakening. Your speakers, descended from the first who shaped magic itself. A flicker. Aurelia's eyes focused slightly, awareness returning for a heartbeat. That's it, Saren encouraged. Come back. Find your anchor. What matters most to you? Each other. Aurelia's voice was distant, echoing. Always each other. Then hold on to that, Saren instructed. Silas, can you hear your sister?
She needs you.
Find her voice and follow it home. Silas's head turned fractionally toward Aurelia. Progress, but agonizingly slow. This isn't working fast enough, Rhea said urgently. Look. The temple stones were moving. Not collapsing, but rearranging themselves, forming patterns that hurt to perceive directly. Ancient magic responded to the twins' awakening, rebuilding the seal that had held for millennia, or breaking it entirely. We need to accelerate their awakening, Valen said. Force them to full consciousness before the seal makes its choice. That's incredibly dangerous, Kala protested. Forced awakening almost killed Saren. And slow awakening will definitely kill them, Valen countered. Along with everyone else, when the first speaker's corruption takes over their bodies. He was right, Saren knew. They were out of gentle options. Everyone needs to bond with them simultaneously, she decided. Create a network of connections that pulls them back together while distributing the awakening strain across multiple pairs. That's never been done, Jasper said. Then we'll be the first. Saren looked at each pair in turn. Rhea, Kala, you're strongest at energy distribution. You anchor the network. Jasper, Nyx's shadow magic can bridge dimensions naturally. You create the pathways. Fenrir and I. She met her bonded amber eyes. We provide the fire to burn away what doesn't belong. The corruption, Fenrir realized.
Exactly.
If any of the first speaker's essence tries to piggyback on their awakening, we incinerate it. And if we can't incinerate it all? Jasper asked the question they were all thinking. Saren's white flames danced around her hands. Then I burn it out anyway, even if it means burning the twins with it. Better dead than corrupted. The brutal calculus of their new reality. Sometimes survival meant making choices that destroyed you to make them. On my mark, Saren said, placing her hands on Aurelia's temples. The others moved into position, Jasper with Silas, Rhea and Kala between both twins, forming a living bridge. 3, 2, 1.
Now.
They dove into the twins' consciousness as one. The space between was chaos. Saren had experienced it during her own disastrous fusion attempt, but this was magnitudes worse. Aurelia and Silas's essences weren't just scattered, they were shattered. Thousands of fragments exist in thousands of dimensions, each one pulling in different directions. And wrapped around every fragment like rot, the first speaker's corruption. It whispered in languages that predated human speech. Promised power, knowledge, transcendence. Showed visions of what the twins could become if they just surrendered to the ancient essence waiting to possess them. Let me in, the first speaker's voice crooned. I'll make you gods. Reshape reality itself. Never die, never weaken, never fear again. Don't listen. Saren shouted across dimensions, her white flames blazing. That's not transcendence, it's slavery, says the girl who burned her first love to ash. The corruption purred. You know what power costs. Why deny them the same strength? The words hit like physical blows, finding every insecurity Saren still carried. But Fenrir's presence anchored her, his love flowing through their bond. Because I learned that power without choice is just another prison, Saren said firmly. Aurelia. Silas. You have a choice. Do we? Aurelia's voice echoed from 1,000 directions. We've been dreaming of this voice our whole lives. It's been calling us since we were children, promising we were special, meant for something greater. You are special, Jasper called out, his shadow magic weaving pathways between the scattered fragments. But not because of power. Because you're you. Because you chose to care for each other, protect your village, live with kindness despite the voice whispering darkness. That voice is a lie, Silas said, and Saren heard doubt in his tone. Isn't it? It showed us such beautiful things. Beautiful things wrapped around poison cores, Rhea said, she and Kala's merged presence creating a net to catch falling fragments. We've all felt the temptation. The promise that power will make everything easier. But power doesn't solve problems, it just gives you new ones. The first speaker's corruption writhed, sensing it was losing control. It pulled, trying to drag the twins' fragments into itself before they could fully reform. No you don't, Saren snarled. Her white flames erupted across dimensions, seeking out every tendril of corruption. Where her fire touched, the ancient darkness screamed. But there was so much of it. 3,000 years of festering madness, and her flames, while powerful, couldn't reach everywhere at once. Jasper, I need you to guide my fire through your shadow paths, she called. On it. His darkness became conduits for her light, carrying white flames to fragments she couldn't reach directly. Rhea, Kala, start pulling the cleaned fragments together. The human-bonded pair worked in perfect synchronization, their merged essence gathering pieces of Aurelia and Silas, weaving them back into cohesive wholes. But the first speaker wasn't finished. If I cannot have them, the ancient voice thundered, then no one shall. The corruption exploded outward in a desperate final gambit. Instead of trying to possess the twins, it tried to destroy them, fragmenting their consciousness beyond any possibility of recovery. Hold them together. Valen's voice cut across dimensions. In the physical world, he was channeling every scrap of power he possessed, using his experience with void corruption to create a containment field around the temple. It was working barely, but Saren could feel the strain. Valen had barely recovered from his possession. Pushing himself this hard might kill him. "We need an anchor," Kala shouted. "Something to hold the twins together while we burn out the corruption." "They need guardians," Fenrir said suddenly. Tessa and Kieran both had bonded partners before attempting transformation. Aurelia and Silas need the same. "But they don't have guardians," Jasper protested. "There are no wolves here, no creatures that." "They have each other," Saren realized. "Twin speakers. What if they're meant to be each other's guardians?" The revelation struck like lightning. Every speaker bonded with a guardian creature: wolf, raven, serpent, shadow being. But what if the ultimate bond was between two speakers themselves? Not romantic like Rhea and Kala, but something else. Something deeper, older, familial, twin-souled. Two halves of one whole. Aurelia. Silas. Saren called across dimensions. "Stop trying to hold yourselves together separately. Bond with each other. Let your essences merge." "But we're siblings," Aurelia protested. Not like the stories. "Not every bond is romantic," Saren said firmly. "Some are friendships. Some are duty. Yours is family. The strongest foundation of all. Trust each other completely and merge." A pause that stretched across eternity. Then simultaneously, together. Silver and gold essence spiraled toward each other. Not fighting, not forcing, but choosing to unite. Aurelia and Silas's consciousness merged in a way that transcended individual identity while maintaining both. The moment they completed their twin bond, the first speaker's corruption had nothing to latch onto. It scrabbled for purchase on essences that had become one seamless whole, found no gaps, no weaknesses, no doorways. And Saren's white flames consumed what remained. The ancient corruption screamed as 3,000 years of madness finally ended. Saren felt the moment it dissolved completely, not just destroyed, but purified. Returned to the raw magic it had been before corruption twisted it. The twins' consciousness snapped back together, fully awakened and bonded to each other in a way that made even Saren's connection with Fenrir look simple by comparison. They gasped back to awareness in the physical world simultaneously. Aurelia and Silas's eyes cleared, no longer the terrifying silver and gold glow, but normal colors enhanced by awakened power. Hazel for Aurelia, green for Silas, both flecked with metallic shimmers. "What?" Aurelia looked around in wonder. "What happened?" "You awakened," Saren said, exhaustion making her voice rough. "Properly, safely. And you're bonded to each other in a way no speakers have been in recorded history." "We can feel it," Silas said, looking at his sister with awe. "Everything she feels, every thought she has, it's like we're one person in two bodies." "That's the twin bond," Jasper said, helping Saren stand. All four young speakers were visibly drained, having poured everything into saving the Ashenbrand twins. "Congratulations. You're going to rewrite all the textbooks." A groan pulled their attention to Valen. The Eastern King had collapsed, blood leaking from his nose and ears. The strain of maintaining the containment field had pushed him past his limits. "Get him medical attention," Saren ordered the reinforcements.
Now.
As specialists rushed to help Valen, Saren looked at Aurelia and Silas. Despite everything they'd been through, the twins seemed peaceful, complete in a way she'd never seen in new speakers. "What happens now?" Aurelia asked. "Now." A familiar voice echoed across dimensions. "You come home." Tessa and Kieran materialized in the temple, not fully solid, but present enough. Their relief was palpable even through their partially manifested forms. "You did it," Tessa said, and Saren heard pride in her teacher's voice. "You saved them. Saved everyone." "We had good teachers," Saren replied, echoing the words she'd used before. Kieran smiled. "And now you are the teachers. Because Aurelia and Silas will need guidance learning to navigate their twin bond. And you're the only ones with experience saving speakers from the brink." "Wait," Jasper said. "You're saying we should train them? Who is better?"
Tessa asked.
"You've all walked the path they're starting. You know what mistakes to avoid because you made them yourselves. You're not untouchable dimensional guardians, you're real, relatable, present. Plus, Kieran added with a grin, we're getting reports of 17 more awakenings worldwide. The Void's assault weakened dimensional barriers everywhere. The age of hidden, isolated speakers is over. We need more than just 2 teachers for what's coming. Saren looked at Fenrir, having an entire conversation through their bond in heartbeats. Ready to be teachers ourselves? Together? Always. All right, Saren said aloud, straightening despite her exhaustion. We'll do it. All of us. But she looked at Tessa seriously. We do it our way. Not just training for combat, but teaching speakers that bonds are choices. That power is responsibility. That love is stronger than corruption. That's exactly what we hoped you'd say, Tessa replied, her form flickering with emotion. As the sun reached its zenith over Thornhaven, Saren felt the weight and wonder of what they'd accomplished. They'd saved 2 speakers, destroyed ancient corruption, and proven that the next generation was ready to carry the torch forward. The age of hidden speakers was over. The age of united guardians had begun. 3 months later, the Academy sat at the convergence point of 3 realms, mortal, shadow, and the spaces between. Tessa and Kieran had created it from compressed reality itself, a place where dimensions intersected safely and speakers could train without threatening the world. 42 students now walked its crystalline halls. Some bonded with wolves, others with ravens, serpents, bears, even a few bonded with shadow beings or, like Rhea and Kala, with each other. The twin-bonded Aurelia and Silas had become something of celebrities, proof that bonds could take forms no one had imagined. Saren stood on the Academy's observation platform, watching new students practice basic energy manipulation in the courtyard below. Fenrir leaned against her back, his warmth comforting and familiar. You're thinking too loud, he murmured. She smiled. Just remembering. 6 months ago, I was a terrified girl who'd killed her first love and thought she was a monster. Now I'm teaching others not to make my mistakes. Character growth, Jasper said, appearing with nicks on his shoulder. It's very dramatic. I approve. How are the shadow students? Saren asked, frustrated that they can't just brood and be mysterious all the time, he said with a grin. Turns out actual training requires effort. Who knew? Rhea and Kala joined them, their merged aura pulsing contentedly. The twin bonds want to know if they're allowed to merge during combat exercises, or if that's cheating. Allowed, Saren decided. But they need to learn to fight separately too. Relying solely on merged strength makes them predictable. Listen to you, Kala teased gently. 6 months, and you sound like Tessa. I'll take that as a compliment. A shimmer announced Tessa and Kieran's arrival. The dimensional guardians rarely fully manifested anymore. Their consciousness existed across so many realms that condensing into single forms was uncomfortable. But they visited regularly, checking on the academy they'd created. Council meeting, Tessa announced. The Primal has news. They gathered in the academy's heart, a chamber that existed simultaneously in all 3 realms. The Primal's ancient form was already waiting, looking more solid than usual. Not a good sign. The Void is adapting, he said without preamble, learning from their failures. They're no longer trying to corrupt speakers. Instead, they're creating their own void-born entities with abilities that mirror speaker powers. How is that possible? Valen asked. The Eastern King had recovered from his near-death experience and now served as the Academy's tactical advisor. His experience with corruption made him invaluable. They studied the knowledge they stole from the archives, the Primal explained. Figured out the mechanisms behind bonds, awakening, power manifestation. They're reverse engineering speaker abilities. So we're facing artificial speakers designed specifically to counter real ones, Thane said grimly. The Northern King had joined his brother at the Academy, the two working together for the first time in decades. Exactly, the Primal confirmed. And they're producing them faster than new speakers are awakening naturally. Within a year, they could outnumber us. Silence fell like snow. Then we train faster, Saren said firmly. Work harder. Get every awakened speaker to the academy where we can prepare them properly. And we find new ways to fight, Jasper added. The void adapted to us. Time we adapt to them. That's the spirit, Kieran said, his approval warming the room. The void thinks in terms of consumption and corruption. But we have something they'll never understand. Love, Aurelia said, her hand finding Silas's. Their twin bond glowed softly. Choice, Rhea added, Calla nodding beside her. Family, Fenrir said, his amber eyes meeting Saren's. All of that, Tessa confirmed. The void is powerful, ancient, and patient. But we're alive. We create, build, hope. And that's a strength they can never truly counter. So what's our move? Valen asked. Saren stood, feeling the weight of leadership settling naturally on her shoulders. 6 months ago, she would have buckled under it. Now she wore it with purpose. We expand the academy. Train every speaker we can find. Build bonds, not just between speakers and guardians, but between all awakened pairs. Create a network so strong that attacking one means facing all of us. A united council of speakers, Kieran said, and she heard approval in his voice. Exactly. And we make it clear to the void. They picked a fight with the wrong species. They picked a fight with speakers who remember what it's like to be powerless, Jasper said. Who chose strength over fear, love over corruption. We're not just defending reality. We're fighting for the right to keep choosing our own paths. The primal's ancient eyes swept over them all. Young speakers who'd become teachers, warriors, leaders in the span of months. The first speaker would be proud, he said quietly. Not of her corrupted self, but of who she was before the madness took her. She dreamed of a world where speakers united instead of isolated, where bonds were chosen rather than forced. Then let's make her dream real, Saren said. Not perfectly, not easily, but together. Through the academy's windows, she could see new students arriving. A wolf-bonded pair from the southern territories, a raven speaker from the east, twin siblings from the far west who might be like Aurelia and Silas. Each one was a choice made manifest. Each bond was an act of defiance against forces that wanted to corrupt or control them. And each represented hope. The void wants war, Saren said, white flames dancing around her hands. Then we'll give them one. But not on their terms. On ours. With love as our weapon and choice as our shield. And if we fall? Calla asked quietly. Then we fall together, Saren replied. But we don't fall silent. We fight, we teach, we love, and we make sure the next generation knows how to do the same. Tessa smiled, her partially manifested form glowing with pride. Sounds like you don't need us anymore. We'll always need you, Saren corrected. But you were right. You can't teach walking when you've forgotten what feet feel like. You're guardians of reality itself now. We're guardians of each other. Different roles, same goal, Kieran said. Different paths, same destination, Fenrir agreed. As the council meeting dissolved into planning sessions, tactical considerations, training schedules, recruitment strategies, Saren found herself standing alone on the observation platform again. 6 months ago, she'd been nobody. A scared girl running from a power that had killed her first love. Now she was Saren Ashwood, fully awakened speaker, bonded to Fenrir, teacher to dozens of new speakers, and leader in a war that would define her generation. Unthinkable. And yet, here she stood. You did good today, Fenrir said, materializing beside her in human form. We did good, she corrected, pulling him close. Together. Together, he agreed, and through their bond, she felt his absolute certainty that whatever came next, void armies, corrupted speakers, reality itself unraveling, they would face it as they'd faced everything else. With love. With choice. With bonds forged not in chains but in trust. The sun set over the academy, painting the sky in colors that existed across 3 dimensions. Somewhere in the darkness, the void gathered its forces for the next assault. But here, in this moment, surrounded by speakers who'd chosen strength over fear and love over corruption, Saren felt something she hadn't felt in years.
Hope.
The age of isolated speakers was over. The age of united guardians had begun. And the story, their story, every speaker's story, was just beginning.
The end.
Moonlit Souls. We've reached the end of Tessa and Kieran's epic journey, but as you can see, the story continues with the next generation. What did you think of this finale? Should I create a sequel following Saren and her students? Who was your favorite character? Favorite moment? Drop all your thoughts below. This has been a 3-hour journey of love, sacrifice, dimensional magic, and bonds that transcend reality itself. Thank you for howling along with me through all 12 chapters. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to Wolf Heart Tales for more epic shifter romances, and drop a comment telling me what story you want to hear next. Until the next full moon, remember, bonds are bridges, not chains. Love is always stronger than corruption. And you are never alone when you choose to trust your pack. Stay wild, stay bonded, and keep howling at the moon. This is Wolf Heart Tales, signing off. See you in the next story, Moonlit Souls.